What if the history of human civilization isn't a straight line of progress, but a graveyard of forgotten futures?
That's the question that haunts this entire collection of sources. We tend to think of history as a ladder, right?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
start primitive, we get a little better, we invent the wheel, and, eventually we arrive at the smartphone. But the evidence we have here suggests something much more unsettling.
It really does. It feels less like a ladder and more like a maze where we took a wrong turn and, well, just forgot where we came from.
Right.
We are treating human history today not as a textbook subject, but as a hidden global superpower,
A suppressed file.
a suppressed file.
Exactly. And to prove that, we have three shattering revelations right off the top. Revelation A, we didn't invent the computer in the 20th century.
No.
We found one at the bottom of the ocean from 2,000 years ago.
Which honestly just sounds impossible. Revelation B, we didn't invent nanotechnology in some sterile lab in Silicon Valley.
Not even close.
Medieval blacksmiths were forging carbon nanotubes into swords while Europe was stumbling through the Dark Ages.
And Revelation C, which might be the most important one for our survival today, we assume cities destroy nature. That's the rule, right?
Concrete over green.
Concrete over green. But an ancient civilization built a metropolis that actually healed the forest.
By the end of this deep dive, you will never look at a map, a battery, or even the ground beneath your feet the same way again.
That's a promise.
So we have a massive stack of research here. We've distilled it down to 10 extraordinary facts that they rewrite the timeline. Let's map this out for you before we dive in. We're counting down from 10 to 1.
Let's go. Fact 10, the Amazon's guarding cities. The myth of the virgin rainforest is about to be shattered.
Fact 9, the Antikythera computer. The smartphone of antiquity. This thing predicted eclipses while most people were still counting on their fingers.
Fact 8, the 12,000-year-old temple, Göbekli Tepe. This changes everything because it proves religion came before farming. We didn't settle down to farm.
We settled down to pray.
We settled down to pray.
Fact 7, the Indus Valley plumbing. This one is confusing for the history books, why 2500 BCE sanitation was better than, Victorian London.
Fact 6, the nanotech swords, Damascus steel, and lost quantum chemistry. We still can't fully replicate what they did.
Fact 5, the lost empire of Aksum. The Singapore of the ancient world, a trading superpower that history classes just somehow forgot.
Fact 4, the Great Wall of Gorgon. Everyone knows the Great Wall of China. Almost no one knows about the Red Snake Barrier of Iran, which was an industrial miracle.
Fact 3, the 300-year-long battery. The Baghdad battery mystery. Did they have electricity, or was it just a magic jar?
Fact 2, the genetic ghost. The unknown species hiding in our DNA. We are not just Homo sapiens, we are a walking museum of lost species.
And finally, fact 1, the first global network, the Bronze Age Internet of Goods. Long before fiber optics, the world was already wired together.
It's an incredible list.
All right, are you ready to see the world differently? Let's start the clock. We're officially starting the clock. You might think you know the basics of this subject, but the reality is much bigger than you imagine. Let's start with the true scale. Fact number 10.
The Amazon's garden cities.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when I think of the Amazon, I have a very, very specific image in my head. I think Survivor.
But right.
I think man versus wild. I think of a green hell, a virgin wilderness where nature is king and humans are just barely hanging on.
That is the image we've been sold for centuries, the pristine myth, the idea that the Amazon is this untouched Eden that humans never really penetrated.
And honestly, it makes sense. If you've ever seen footage of the deep jungle, it's hostile, it's dense, it's wet, the soil's terrible. It doesn't scream great place for a metropolis. So are we talking about a few tribes clearing a patch of land, or is this actually substantial?
We are talking about something that fundamentally challenges our definition of civilization. The sources we're looking at today, specifically research published in Nature regarding the Kasarabe culture, take that image of the green hell and just shred it.
But this isn't just speculation, right? Because for a long time, archaeologists suspected there was something there. Stories of El Dorado and all that. But they couldn't see it.
Right.
The jungle is just too thick. You can't just fly a plane over and take a photo.
No, you could be standing 5 feet away from a monumental earthwork and not see it because of the vines, the canopy density. But the game changer here is LiDAR.
Light detection and ranging.
Exactly. And it's important to understand why this works because it's not just some magic camera. Think of it as sonar, but with light.
Okay.
Researchers, led by Heiko Prumers, flew a helicopter over the Llanos de Mojos in Bolivia. They shot billions of laser pulses at the ground.
Billions. Okay, so you're just peppering the forest with lasers.
Yes. Now, 99% of those pulses hit a leaf, a branch, or a bird, and they bounce back. But that remaining 1%, it finds a gap. It hits the actual dirt and bounces back to the sensor.
So you have this massive data set of tree hits, and then this tiny, tiny data set of ground hits.
Precisely. And with enough computing power, you can filter out all the visual noise of the vegetation. You digitally delete the jungle. And when they did this,
What did they see?
the screen didn't show a random forest floor. It showed a circuit board.
A circuit board.
It showed vast networks of earthen platforms, causeways, canals, and geometric earthworks. It revealed a built environment that had been hidden for centuries.
Okay, so they found structures. But let's get specific about this Khazarabi culture. Because when you say garden cities, I picture a suburb with nice hedges.
Right.
Or maybe the modern urban planning concept. Is that what we're looking at?
It's a helpful term, but we need to be careful with it. This wasn't a city in the way we usually think of it, like a dense, suffocating urban core where everyone is crammed together.
Okay.
This was low-density agrarian urbanism.
Low-density agrarian urbanism. That's a mouthful. Break that down for me.
Imagine settlements dispersed across the landscape, but linked by perfectly straight roads, causeways, and surrounded by managed forests and fields. It's a decentralized system.
I want to try and visualize this for you, the listener. Because earthworks can sound kind of boring if you don't know what you're looking at.
Let's do it.
Okay, close your eyes for a second. Imagine you are standing on one of these ancient causeways. It's dawn. The sun is just coming up. You are in the Bolivian Amazon, roughly 1,500 years ago. What are you standing on?
You're standing on a raised earthen road. It's built up high 2, maybe 3 meters.
Why so high?
Because the Llanos de Mojos is a seasonal floodplain. This is crucial to understanding their engineering. For months of the year, the savanna floods.
It's all underwater.
The world turns into a massive, shallow lake. So beneath you, the water is shimmering silver in the morning light. You are walking on a dry, straight road hovering above the water.
And the forest around you.
It's not a tangle. It's not a wall of green. It's curated.
Curated. That implies a lot of maintenance.
Constant maintenance. You look to your left and you see a corridor of Brazil nut trees. Now, these aren't growing randomly. The genetic record shows they were planted and selected for harvest. You look to your right, and there are palms clustered in productive groves. There is cacao growing in the dappled shade. It's an orchard that stretches for miles.
So it's a food forest.
Exactly. And look at the water. Running alongside your causeway are engineered canals. They aren't just for drainage, they are for transport. People are moving goods in canoes,
Right.
and they are filled with fish weirs traps to catch fish as the floodwaters recede.
That's brilliant. So the flood isn't a disaster, it's a harvest mechanism.
It's a resource, and it's loud. The air is humming with biodiversity, scarlet macaws, howler monkeys, but also the sounds of people. You'd see smoke rising from households hidden among the trees.
Unlike the concrete canyons of modern cities, this landscape breathes. That's the quote from the source that stuck with me.
It's a perfect description. Every square meter was productive, yet green. Organized, yet alive.
But I have to play the skeptic here. We know something about the Amazon soil, the laterite soil. It's terrible, it's acidic, it has high aluminum content.
Right.
If you cut down the trees to farm, the rain washes the nutrients away in like 2 seasons. That's why we have slash and burn today. You can't sustain a city on that dirt.
You are absolutely right. The natural soil is garbage for agriculture. And this is where the Khazarabi and other Amazonian cultures did something that, it borders on alchemy.
Okay.
They didn't use the soil they found. They made new soil.
This is a terra preta, right?
Terra preta do Indio, Amazonian dark earth. This is the key technological breakthrough. They engineered the ground beneath their feet.
How? You can't just wish for better dirt.
You use chemistry. They realized, probably through centuries of experimentation, that if you burn wood and organic waste in a specific way, with low oxygen, you create biochar.
Biochar, so charcoal.
Effectively, yes, but specifically structured charcoal. It's incredibly porous. Think of it like a microscopic coral reef in the soil. It acts like a sponge that holds water and nutrients, preventing them from washing away. It also houses microorganisms.
So they were mixing this into the clay.
Tons of it. They mixed biochar, broken pottery, fish bones, and organic waste into the soil. Over generations, this turned that yellow acidic clay into rich, black, fertile loam And this is the crazy part,
Wow.
it regenerates itself.
It regenerates.
The microbial communities are so active that the soil stays fertile for centuries. You can dig up Terra Preta today, 500 years after the civilization collapsed, and it's still better for farming than the surrounding soil.
That is essentially terraforming. They didn't just adapt to the environment, they upgraded the hardware of the ecosystem.
Exactly. They acted as long-term gardeners, and this completely overturns the narrative we have. We usually think, if you want development, you have to have deforestation.
Right. If you want advancement, you need concrete.
Right. Civilization is usually defined by how much nature you can pave over. But here, the city was the forest.
Let's talk about scale again, because I don't want you, the listener, to picture a really nice community garden. You mentioned a site called Kotoka. What are we looking at in terms of verticality?
We are looking at monumental earthen platforms and pyramidal mounds. Some of these rise more than 20 meters above the floodplain.
20 meters. That's a 7-story building.
Built of earth, in the middle of a swamp. Do you know the kind of labor organization that requires?
I mean,
You don't build a 7-story pyramid by getting a few friends together on the weekend. This implies a complex hierarchy,
and a blueprint.
a rigorous blueprint. The LIDAR data shows that these causeways and canals radiate in cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. The margin of error is tiny. This implies astronomers, engineers, and a central authority.
The source uses a really fascinating analogy to help us understand the layout. It compares this Amazonian model to ancient Rome, and I think that contrast is super helpful.
It is. Think of ancient Rome as a tightly wound fist of stone. It's an empire of compression.
A fist of stone.
You had 1 million people crammed into roughly 14 square kilometers. Dense apartment blocks, stone forums, crowded streets. It's impressive, but it's a pressure cooker.
Okay. And the Amazon.
The Amazonian cities were an open hand.
An open hand.
Fingers spread across the landscape. They distributed a similar population level, but across hundreds of square kilometers. They maintained the forest cover while still achieving urban-scale coordination.
It's like, okay, imagine comparing Manhattan to a futuristic eco-city where every building is wrapped in vertical gardens and connected by green corridors,
Yes,
but stretched out over the size of a state.
exactly. Except the Kassereb culture achieved this balance 1,000 years before Europe built its first Gothic cathedral.
That is the kicker. We treat eco-cities as this futuristic sci-fi concept.
Eh.
One day, we will live in harmony with nature. And these guys were doing it while Europe was still figuring out that maybe you shouldn't drink the water you poop in.
And let's not mistake the material for this sophistication. Rome prioritized monumental, stone-static, rigid, imposing. The Amazon prioritized ecological integration dynamic, living, resilient.
Right.
Just because they built with earth and wood doesn't mean it was less advanced. It was differently advanced.
But if it was so resilient, so adapted to the environment, why is it gone? Why do we find it with lasers instead of walking into a thriving metropolis?
That's the tragedy of the story. It wasn't the environment that killed them. It wasn't that the system failed. The sources point to the disruption caused by European contact.
I'm talking about disease.
Smallpox, influenza, measles. These pathogens travel faster than armies. It's likely that the diseases swept down the trade networks, those same beautiful causeways we described, decimating the population before most Europeans even saw the cities.
That's a chilling thought. The infrastructure that made them strong, the connectivity is what delivered the blow.
And once the gardeners were gone, the maintenance stopped. And because they built with earth and wood, not stone, the jungle metabolized the city.
The forest took it back.
It reclaimed it. The causeways are hidden under centuries of regrowth. But think about what was lost, not just the buildings, but the knowledge.
Yeah.
What planning principles? What relationship with living systems? What did they know about sustainable living that we are currently scrambling to reinvent?
It makes you wonder, what if the future of sustainable cities is actually 1,500 years in our past?
That is the big what if. We are looking for high-tech solutions to climate change, carbon capture machines, massive seawalls, and maybe the answer is waiting under the trees in Bolivia?
It changes your perspective on the Amazon itself. It's not a pristine wilderness. It's a, what was the word used in the text? A palimpsest.
A palimpsest. That's a manuscript that has been scraped clean and written over again. The Amazon is a palimpsest of human-environment collaboration. Those trees you see, that biodiversity.
Yeah.
It's there partly because of the cities, not in spite of them.
That is a profound thought. We usually think of humans as the virus, right? We show up, we ruin the neighborhood. But this proves we can be the immune system. We can be the gardeners.
We can be? We have been before, and keep in mind, Primers and his team have only scanned a fraction of the Amazon.
Right, this is just one corner of Bolivia.
Just one corner. They estimate there could be thousands of these earthworks still out there, hidden. The network was likely far larger than the first Windows reveal. It was a continental web of garden cities.
It really forces us to check our arrogance. We assume our way, the concrete way, the deforestation way, is the only path to civilization. But it's just the one that won. For now.
For now. That's ominous, but also hopeful.
It is hopeful, because if we did it once, we can do it again. We can relearn what they knew about living with the biome rather than against it, before we concrete over our last chances.
Exactly. That was Fact 10. Stay tuned. Fact 9 is coming up next. Picture the scene. It's 1901. We are floating in the Mediterranean, just off the coast of this tiny, rocky Greek island called Antikythera.
And the water there is notoriously dangerous.
Yeah.
Deep, turbulent.
Totally unforgiving. And we're looking at a team of sponge divers. Now, these aren't guys in modern SQB gear.
No.
They're wearing those heavy, terrifying canvas suits with the brass helmets.
Right, they're battling nitrogen narcosis, currents that could just smash them against the rocks. It's an incredibly hostile environment.
And they stumble across something down there in the dark.
A shipwreck, a big one, from the Roman era. Now, usually when you find a wreck like that, you have a mental checklist of what to expect.
Right.
You'd expect the greatest hits of antiquity, marble statues, gold coins, maybe some amphorae that once held wine.
And to be fair, they found all that. It was a massive haul, a real treasure trove of luxury goods.
It was. But amidst the beautiful statues and the pottery, they brought up something else.
Yeah.
A lump, just a corroded, calcified green lump of bronze and wood. It looked like a rock.
Seriously, just junk.
For a while, everyone just assumed it was junk. It literally sat in a museum courtyard in Athens, basically ignored, while everyone was fawning over the statue.
Until the wood dried out and the whole thing just cracked open.
Exactly. It split apart. And inside, they didn't see rock. They saw gears.
Tiny gears.
Precision, intermeshing bronze gears with teeth about 1 millimeter long.
And that lump of bronze is our subject for today. It is, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, the most technologically out-of-place object ever discovered.
It's a complete anomaly.
It's the kind of thing that makes you rub your eyes and just check the history books again to make sure you didn't miss a chapter on ancient sci-fi. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's a fascinating object.
Today we are tackling fact number 9. And honestly, this one keeps me up at night. We've combed through all the research, the X-ray scans, the historical analyses to try and uncover the story of the Antikythera mechanism.
And, calling it an artifact almost feels like we're underselling it. It's really more of a challenge.
A challenge to what?
To our entire timeline of human innovation. We have this idea of history as a ladder, right? We start at the bottom with stone tools, and we climb up step by step to the iPhone.
Yeah, a straight line of progress.
This device suggests we climbed up, reached a pretty high rung, fell off, and then completely forgot we ever had a ladder in the first place.
That's the part I really want to unpack, because when I hear ancient Greece, I'm thinking chariots, sandals, aqueducts. I'm not thinking about gear-driven computers.
But that's essentially what it is.
Yes.
The world's first known analog computer. We're dating this to roughly the 2nd or 1st century BCE.
Over 2,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So just to frame our mission here for this deep dive, we aren't just looking at a cool gadget. We're trying to understand how something this advanced existed, what it actually did, and this is the scary part, how we managed to lose this technology for over a millennium.
Exactly. And to understand why it's fact number 9, why it's so extraordinary, you have to look at the physical complexity. This wasn't a sundial. Inside this wooden case, which was about the size of a shoebox, maybe a mantle clock, there were at least 30, maybe up to 37 intricate bronze gears.
37 gears packed into a box. That sounds like the inside of a Swiss watch, not something from the Iron Age.
It's extremely dense engineering, and they tracked the movements of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 planets known to the ancients.
Mercury, Venus, Mars.
Jupiter and Saturn. It was a portable, mechanical model of the universe.
See, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The source material uses this analogy that I just love. Finding this in ancient Greece is like finding a smartphone in medieval Europe.
That is a very, very apt analogy. It's completely anachronistic.
Or like finding a jet engine next to a water wheel. It just shouldn't be there. And the sources point out this huge gap in technology afterwards.
They do. Here's the context. Before this, historians of technology thought mechanical gearing in the ancient world was uh, limited to very simple things.
Olive presses, that kind of thing.
Crude olive presses, basic water wheels. We did not see comparable gear technologies, specifically astronomical clocks in Europe, until the 14th century.
So wait, that's a gap of...
About 1,400 years.
That is mind-blowing. We had this technology, and then we just stopped.
We didn't just stop. We went backwards. We regressed. But before we get to that, we need to understand the mechanics.
Yeah.
Because there is one specific piece of engineering in here that really shouldn't exist in the 1st century BCE.
What's that?
It's called differential gearing.
Differential gearing. Okay, for the listener who isn't a mechanical engineer, and honestly, for me too, break that down. I associate that with cars.
Right, exactly. If you drive a car, you have a differential. It lets your wheels spin at different speeds when you turn a corner.
Because the outside wheel has to go further.
It has to travel further than the inside wheel. It balances 2 different inputs. It's a system where you can take 2 rotation speeds and combine them to get a single calculated output.
So it's literally doing math with metal.
It's doing math with metal. Input A minus input B equals output C. And the Antikythera mechanism used this to calculate the difference between the sun's position and the moon's to get the phase of the moon.
And when did we think we invented that?
Historians of engineering didn't think humans invented differential gearing until the 1500s or 1600s. And yet, here it is.
Lying on the ocean floor. It implies a level of theoretical understanding we just didn't credit them with. It's not just observing stars, it's building a machine to run a simulation of them.
That's the key word, simulation. This wasn't just a clock, it was a simulator.
Okay, so let's visualize this. The sources paint this incredible picture, and I want to try to put you, the listener, in the room. So imagine you're a wealthy merchant, maybe a Roman senator, you're in Rhodes, say, 80 BCE.
You're at a symposium, a fancy drinking party. The wine is flowing, the philosophy is getting deep.
And you want to impress your guests, so the room goes quiet. A philosopher or an astronomer brings out this wooden box. It's got these bronze plates on the front and back, covered in tiny Greek inscriptions.
And they start turning a little crank on the side. That's the user interface.
Manual input. And the source describes the sound. The bronze wheels whispering against each other. It's not clunky. It's precision.
And on the front, these little bronze hands, these pointers, are dancing across engraved dials.
So what's the operator doing?
They're essentially time traveling. They're setting a date, let's say 3 years into the future. They crank the handle until the calendar dial lines up.
And instantly as they turn that crank, everything else just updates.
Instantly. The machine calculates the position of the sun in the zodiac, the phase of the moon, the location of the planets. It shows you the state of the cosmos for a day that hasn't happened yet.
It's like holding the universe in your hands. I mean, for people who told time by looking at a shadow on the ground, this must have felt like absolute magic.
Or prophecy. You have to remember, in the ancient world, the heavens were about destiny.
Which brings us to what I think of as the killer feature, the eclipse prediction. Because if I'm a king, knowing where the sun is, that's nice. But knowing when the sun is going to disappear, that is power.
Huge power. On the back of the device, there was this large spiral dial. It looked almost like a record. And this tracks something called the Saros cycle.
The Saros cycle, what's that?
It's a specific pattern. Every 223 lunar months, which is about 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, the sun, earth, and moon return to basically the same geometry.
So eclipses repeat in a predictable cycle.
Exactly. The Babylonians knew about this from observation. They had data tables. But this mechanism, it took those tables and it mechanized them.
And it did more than just say when an eclipse would happen.
Oh, much more. The glyphs and inscriptions on it tracked specific details. It told you if it was solar or lunar. It told you the magnitude, so how much the sun or moon would be covered.
And the source mentioned it even predicted the direction of the shadow.
Yes, the direction of obscuration. And perhaps most surprisingly, the color of the eclipse.
The color? Why would it predict the color? That sounds more like weather than astronomy.
Well, atmospheric conditions affect the color of an eclipse, making it look black or red or gray. The Greeks believed these colors were specific omens.
Ah, okay.
A red eclipse might mean famine. A black one might mean the death of a king. So this machine wasn't just a calendar, it was an omen calculator.
That is wild. Imagine the power trip. You stand there, you turn a crank, and you tell a general, hey, in 3 years, the sun is going to go dark, it'll be red, and the shadow will come from the east.
You'd be a bronze oracle. Precisely.
Good.
But what fascinates me even more is the engineering behind it. Because the moon is tricky.
Tricky how? Doesn't it just go around the Earth in a circle?
See, that's what a simple machine would assume. But the moon's orbit isn't a perfect circle. It's an ellipse.
Okay.
This is getting into Kepler's laws of planetary motion, which weren't discovered until the 17th century.
And because it's an ellipse, that affects its speed.
When the moon is closer to Earth, it moves faster. When it's further away, it moves slower. It speeds up and slows down.
And a standard gear just spins at one constant rate. So a normal clock would get it wrong pretty quickly.
It would drift out of sync with reality. But the Antikythera mechanism didn't drift. It matched that variable speed.
How? How did they solve that? How do you make a gear change speed?
This is one of the most stunning details. They used a pin and slot mechanism.
Pin and slot. Help me visualize that.
Okay, imagine two gears stacked on top of each other, but they're not on the exact same center point. They're slightly offset.
Got it.
One gear has a little pin sticking up. The other gear has a slot that the pin fits into. As the bottom gear turns, it drives the top gear via that pin.
But because they're off-center.
The leverage changes as it rotates. At one point, the pin is close to the center, driving it slowly. Half a turn later, the pin is further out, driving it faster.
So just by the geometry of the metal, the output gear accelerates and decelerates all on its own.
Yes, it creates a variable speed output from a constant speed input. It perfectly mimics the moon's anomaly.
That is effectively calculus.
It is. But they were doing it before algebra was even really a thing. They translated this deep mathematical understanding into physical metal.
It's just so hard to wrap my head around. How do we even know all this? You said it was just a corroded lump.
Right.
How do we know about pin and slot mechanisms inside a rock without smashing it?
Well, that's where modern technology came in. For most of the 20th century, it was a complete mystery. But in the 2000s, a research team brought in the big guns. They used X-ray tomography and high-resolution surface scanning.
Like a medical CT scan for the device?
Exactly like that. They took thousands of digital slices through the metal. They could peer inside the fragments without breaking them. They counted the gear teeth, and that's crucial. If you know a gear has 127 teeth, you can figure out the math it's doing.
And they found text too, right? That's the part that blew my mind.
They did. This was the breakthrough. The X-rays revealed text hidden inside the layers of corrosion. It was a user manual written right on the bronze plates.
A user manual, like insert tab A into slot B.
More like a scientific legend. Tiny Greek text explaining what the dials did. Lifting games in different cities, explaining the eclipse cycles.
Yeah.
That's what allowed them to reconstruct the missing parts.
So we aren't guessing. The device literally tells us this dial tracks the moon.
The evidence is overwhelming. The math is right there in the metal.
So this brings us to the part that really haunts me. The shadow history, as the source calls it. If they could build this, where are all the others?
That's the big question.
Why do we only have one?
I think it comes down to one simple fact. Bronze is valuable. It's recyclable. Throughout history, if you had a complex bronze machine that became obsolete or broke or you just needed cash, you didn't put it in a museum.
You melted it down.
You melted it down, turned it into a sword or coins.
So the only reason we have this one is because it was lost. It fell off a boat.
Exactly. It was preserved by salt and silt. If it hadn't been shipwrecked, it almost certainly would have been melted down centuries ago.
That is such a tragic thought. The only reason we know they were this smart is because they had a shipping accident.
And it suggests this wasn't some singular magical object. You don't build a machine this complex on your first try. The perfection of it implies a tradition, a workshop. There were probably predecessors.
And the sources mention that Roman texts, like from Cicero, actually talk about things like this, right?
Yes. Cicero wrote about a device made by Archimedes and another by his friend Posidonius. He described these spheres that, when turned, showed the motions of the sun, moon, and planets.
And for centuries, historians just thought he was exaggerating.
We're describing simple toys, static models, but the Antikythera mechanism proves those texts were likely accurate. There was a thriving tradition of this.
And then it vanished. The flickering candle. That's the metaphor one expert uses, and I think it's perfect. We assume technology always moves forward.
But this proves that's not true at all.
It proves progress is fragile, the collapse of the Roman Empire, libraries burning, workshops closing. The transmission of that knowledge just broke down. We lost the ability to do this.
And we didn't get it back for how long? Not until the astronomical clocks of the 14th century. We lost that sophisticated knowledge for over a millennium.
That's terrifying. It makes you wonder what knowledge we're losing right now that we don't even realize.
Exactly. Will our hard drives survive 2,000 years under the ocean? Probably not.
So when we look at this corroded lump of gears, what are we actually looking at?
I think we're looking at a testament to human potential, but also a warning. It shows that the ancients were not primitive. Their minds were just as sharp as ours. They were capable of this incredible precision engineering.
They were clutching the cosmos in a box.
Clutching the cosmos. I love that.
It's just such a powerful image to think someone 2,000 years ago sat there, turned a crank, and watched the future play out on a bronze dial.
And the fact that we found it is a miracle. It forces us to rewrite the textbooks. It proves the Dark Ages weren't just about a lack of new invention. They were about the tragic loss of established genius.
Absolutely. Well, that is the story of fact number 9, the Antikythera mechanism, a computer from before Christ, and a reminder that the path of progress is a lot windier than we like to think.
And that sometimes the most advanced technology is the stuff we forgot we had.
Truly. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about mechanical complexity gears, ratios, bronze, the hard math of the stars. It's impressive, it's deliberate, and it's very manufactured.
It is the pinnacle of human engineering from that era.
But there's another kind of complexity. Not the kind you build with a hammer and a file, but the kind that builds itself. We're going to shift gears, pun intended, from the cold precision of Greek bronze to something much older and honestly much harder to explain.
We're moving from the complexity of the machine to the complexity of life.
Exactly. Because if you thought finding a computer in a shipwreck was an outlier, wait until you hear this next one. It's the moment where the biology starts looking more like high-level engineering. Fact number 8 is where things get truly strange.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are continuing our special series, The Extraordinary 10, and I hope you're sitting down for this one.
This is the big one.
It really is. If you're just joining us, this is where we pull apart historical facts that are so strange, they barely feel real.
We're looking for the glitches in the matrix, the moments that make you stop and say, wait, that's not how the story's supposed to go.
And today, we're on fact number 8. This is the one that arguably broke archaeology. We're talking about the 12,000-year-old temple.
Specifically, the site of Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey.
And I have to admit, looking at the source material this week, I kept double-checking the dates. I seriously thought there was a typo.
That's the most common reaction. It just looks like a mistake.
It really does. Because our mission for this deep dive is to understand how a group of people who, by all rights, shouldn't have been able to organize a potluck dinner managed to build a cathedral.
Right. We're looking at how a pile of rocks on a Turkish hilltop just overturned the entire standard model of how civilization began.
It forces a total rewrite of the timeline. We used to have this very neat, very linear story of human progress.
It was comfortable. And then Göbekli Tepe shows up and basically throws a grenade into the textbook.
Okay, so let's anchor everyone in that timeline first, because the date is the whole headline here. We're talking about 9600 BCE.
Roughly 9600 to 9500 BCE.
Just saying that number, 9600 BCE, can feel a bit abstract. So let's try to triangulate that. When I think ancient, my brain immediately goes to, say, the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Or Stonehenge. Those are the usual benchmarks.
Exactly. But the scale here is just, it's mind-bending. The Great Pyramid is built around 2500 BCE.
Right. And Stonehenge is in that same ballpark, maybe a little earlier. So if you were an ancient Egyptian standing there watching the pyramids go up,
Okay.
and you looked back in time to Göbekli Tepe, you're looking back more than 7,000 years.
Whoa. More than 7,000.
To the builders of Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe was already ancient history. It was already lost, buried, forgotten. The time between us and the pyramids is significantly shorter than the time between the pyramids and Göbekli Tepe.
That gives me vertigo. It just completely messes with your whole sense of perspective.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very tail end of the last ice age.
Exactly. The transition from the Paleolithic, the Old Stone Age, to the Neolithic. And that context is so crucial because of who was alive then.
Right. In 9600 BCE, humans are not supposed to be building monumental architecture.
No. The standard model says we're hunter-gatherers, nomads.
We're living in, skin tents? Temporary huts?
Wandering bands, yeah. Using flint tools. We don't have metal, we don't have pottery yet, we definitely don't have the wheel. And yet, on this hilltop, these people didn't just stack a few rocks, they engaged in industrial-scale engineering.
Let's get visual for a second. I want you to picture this place.
Yeah.
When I hear temple, I think of something like the Parthenon, columns, a roof. But the source material describes something much more alien.
Alien is a fair word. It's definitely distinct. So imagine you're on this limestone plateau. It's the highest point for miles.
Okay.
And dug into this plateau are these massive circular and oval enclosures.
So they're not sitting on the ground, they're sunken.
Correct. They're pit enclosures. You've got stone walls lining the pit, and set into those walls are these huge T-shaped limestone pillars.
And in the center, that's where the main event is.
In the dead center of these circles, you have two colossal T-shaped pillars standing side by side.
And when you say colossal, you mean it. These aren't small. Some are over 5 meters tall. That's what, 16, 17 feet high?
Taller than a giraffe, yeah. And weighing between 10 and 20 tons. Some of the unfinished pillars they found in the quarry nearby weigh up to 50 tons.
And that T-shape is deliberate. It's not just a shape to hold up a roof or something. The sources are pretty clear. The T is meant to be a person.
It's anthropomorphic. A stylized human figure. The top bar is the head. It's faceless, looking down. The vertical part is the body. And on the central pillars, if you look close, you can see arms carved in low relief down the side.
And hands, right?
Yeah, long fingers reaching around the front, resting on what looks like a belt or a loincloth. The detail is incredible.
So you have these stone giants, faceless ancestors or gods, presiding over the whole thing. But what really blew my mind was the artwork on them. Because again, Stone Age, I'm expecting stick figures.
Far from it. This is high art. The pillars are just covered in reliefs. You have snakes slithering down the sides, foxes, wild boars with bared teeth, cranes, vultures, scorpions.
It's not exactly a petting zoo, is it? Sounds terrifying.
No, it's aggressive. It's dominated by predators and deadly creatures. It's wild nature captured in stone. And there are also abstract symbols, H-shapes, crescents. It suggests a whole complex mythology that we've completely lost.
I just want to pause on the atmosphere for a second. Because today, it's a ruin under a big protective roof. But 12,000 years ago.
It would have been overwhelming. Imagine it's night. No light pollution. The Milky Way is just blazing overhead. You're up on this hill, and down in those sunken enclosures, they've got fires burning.
And the firelight would play tricks on your eyes.
That's the idea. Archaeologists think those carvings, the animals, were designed to interact with flickering firelight. As the flames dance, the shadows shift, and the animals on the pillars would just appear to move.
It's like prehistoric cinema.
A totally hallucinogenic experience. You've got these shifting stone giants, the moving animals, and then you add the sound. The acoustics in these stone circles are unique. Chanting, drumming, it would just reverberate.
The smell. The sources talk a lot about the feasting aspect.
Oh, the smell would be intense. They found massive amounts of animal bones. This was a barbecue. The scent of roasting aurochs, these huge, wild cattle and gazelle smoke, mixed with the smell of hundreds of people packed into these enclosures.
It's a total sensory overload. You're stepping out of the dark wilderness into this lit, loud, aromatic, sacred space.
Exactly. A place where the normal rules are suspended.
But this brings us to the impossible part, the who. Because, I mean, when we see architecture this big, we assume there's a king, a pharaoh, someone with a whip.
Right. You need a surplus economy, you need a hierarchy to force people to work. That's been the assumption forever. You need a state to build a temple.
But the evidence from the trash they left behind at Göbekli Tepe tells a completely different story.
The trash says there were no farmers here. The animal bones are all wild game. The plant remains are wild cereals and nuts. No domesticated sheep, no cattle, and crucially, no houses.
No houses.
No permanent settlement, no streets, no granaries. The people who built this were hunter-gatherers.
See, that's the part that doesn't compute. We're taught that hunter-gatherers live hand-to-mouth, they move with the seasons, they live in tiny groups.
They're not supposed to have the time or the organization to quarry 50-ton rocks. One of the sources had a great analogy for it. It said, it's as if a camping trip of 200 people decided to build an airport.
I love that. It perfectly captures the absurdity of it.
It does. An airport is this massive infrastructure project. A group of campers doesn't need an airport, and they certainly shouldn't be able to build one with Swiss Army knives.
So how do they do it? I mean, just physically?
With immense difficulty. You have to imagine them with stone hammers just pecking away at the bedrock for months to carve out one pillar. Then they have to move it uphill with no wheels.
Just ropes and muscle.
And leverage. They estimate that moving just one of the bigger pillars would take about 500 people pulling in unison.
500 people. That's bigger than any hunter-gatherer band we know of. So you have to bring different clans together.
Exactly. And that creates a massive management problem. If you don't have a police force, how do you stop 500 armed hunters from killing each other over a disagreement?
It has to be belief.
It has to be. The shared myth, the obligation to the ancestors, the story they told themselves about those stone giants was powerful enough to coordinate labor on an industrial scale.
And this leads us to the big paradigm shift. This is where the textbooks get torched. Because the old story, the one I learned, was the Neolithic Revolution.
V. Gordon Childs theory. It's been gospel since the 1920s.
And it went like this. Step 1, people invent farming. Step 2, they get extra food, so they settle down in villages. Step 3, because they're settled, they have time on their hands, and they start thinking about religion and building temples.
Economy leads to culture. Material security leads to spiritual expression. It's very logical.
But Göbekli Tepe just flips the whole table over.
Completely reverses it. Here, the temple appears before the farm. The religion comes first.
So they didn't build the temple because they had settled down.
They settled down because they needed to be near the temple. That's the leading theory now. It's called the feasting theory.
Okay, walk us through that.
Think about the logistics. You have 500 people on this hill for a ritual. They're hauling rocks, they're hungry. You can't feed 500 people for a month just by hunting. You'd wipe out the entire local ecosystem.
You need catering, a reliable, high-calorie food source.
You need bread. And here is the smoking gun detail. Geneticists have traced the origin of domesticated einkorn wheat, the ancestor of all the wheat we eat.
Okay.
It's traced to the Karaka Dağ Mountains, which are about 20 miles from Göbekli Tepe.
You're kidding me. The birthplace of agriculture is in the temple's backyard.
It's too close to be a coincidence. The theory is that people started cultivating these wild grasses not to stop hunting, but because they needed to fuel the feasts. They needed to brew beer and bake bread for the gods and the workers.
That is a massive aha moment. We didn't develop religion because we had surplus time. We created surplus time farming because we couldn't not build temples.
It suggests the drive for meaning, for ritual. That was the engine that pulled us into civilization. The spiritual need drove the technological innovation.
It's almost like we trapped ourselves. We wanted these big rituals, so we invented farming to pay for them. But then farming requires you to stay put and work the fields all year.
That's a cynical but probably accurate way to look at it. We traded our freedom for our faith. But it speaks to something fundamental about us. We aren't just homo economicus, we're homo religiosus. We are storytellers first.
I want to go back to the site itself, because there's one more weird detail. These enclosures weren't just built and then used forever, were they?
No, and this is maybe the most confusing part. There's a cycle. They'd build a massive stone circle, use it for a few generations, and then they would deliberately destroy it.
How? Smash it.
No, they would bury it. With incredible care, they'd haul in tons of rubble and soil and fill the enclosure to the brim, creating a man-made hill.
That seems like so much wasted effort. Why build a 16-foot stone giant just to bury it?
It implies the temple wasn't a building in our sense. It wasn't about having the structure. It was about the process of building it and maybe unbuilding it.
Like a sand mandala.
Exactly, or a funeral.
If these pillars represented ancestors, maybe they had a lifespan. You birth them from the rock, you interact with them, and then when their time is done, you give them a proper burial, so the enclosure dies.
It dies. And then they'd build a new one right next to it. A constant cycle of renewal.
And what were they doing in there? You mentioned feasting, but the sources also mention something a bit darker. Skull cults.
Yes. Archaeologists have found human skull fragments at the site that show signs of modification.
Modification how?
Deep cuts, drilled holes, signs that the flesh was removed after death and the bone was carved. One theory is they were hanging these skulls from the pillars.
Which sounds incredibly grim to us.
It does, but in their context, it likely points to a deep veneration. You're not just remembering an ancestor, you're keeping them physically present at the ceremony.
It connects back to that tactile experience we look at photos. But for them, it was touching the cool stone, feeling the relief of that bore in the dark, holding the skull of an ancestor. It's all very physical.
It's grounding. It's a way of anchoring yourself in time and memory.
So let's zoom out. What are the implications of all this? What does it say about us?
I think it redefines what it means to be human. We tend to define ourselves by our technology, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age. But Göbekli Tepe suggests our defining characteristic is actually our imagination.
The compulsion to create meaning.
Yes, we are the species that builds the impossible because we believe in the invisible. The hardware in our brains 12,000 years ago was the same as it is today. They weren't primitive thinkers.
And the capacity for cooperation. That's the other huge takeaway from me.
Massive. You know, Dunbar's number, the theory that humans can only maintain stable relationships with about 150 people.
Right. Any group bigger than that tends to splinter.
Well, Göbekli Tepe proves that 12,000 years ago we found a hack. We found a way to cooperate in groups of hundreds, maybe thousands, and the hack was shared fiction, shared mythology.
The network came before the city.
It's humbling. We think we're so organized with our global trade and the internet, but these people organized a massive multi-generational construction project with nothing but the power of their minds and their myths.
And the legacy is undeniable. I mean, the things are still there.
They are. A lot of the mud brick cities of later empires, like Babylon, they've melted back into the earth. But these stone circles, because they were buried, are perfectly preserved.
It's just a testament to the power of that shared belief.
It really forces you to ask, what are we building today that's fueled by that kind of conviction? What are we building that will still be standing in 12,000 years?
That is a question that might keep me up at night. We build for utility. They build for eternity.
Well put.
So, to wrap this up, Göbekli Tepe isn't just an old pile of rocks. It's the smoking gun that proves we've had the story of civilization backwards for over 100 years.
It proves that the foundations of our world aren't economic, they're imaginative. We literally imagined civilization into existence, and then we built the tools to support that vision.
Which means the most powerful tool we have isn't the plow or the steam engine.
It's the story. The story is everything.
Now let's take a second to process that. If that's possible, then the next revelation shouldn't surprise us. And yet, it's one of the most debated mysteries in science. Shifting gears to fact number 7. Welcome back. We are moving deeper into our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 7.
And we're at the point in the list where the timeline gets a little vertigo-inducing. We usually associate advanced engineering with, say, the Roman Empire or maybe the Renaissance.
Right.
But fact 7 requires us to go back much, much further.
We are heading to the Bronze Age, roughly 2500 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
So for everyone keeping score at home, that is 4,500 years ago.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, the pyramids of Giza are essentially brand new construction projects. Stonehenge is still being tinkered with.
And yet, in the Indus Valley, modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, we find something that, well, arguably requires more precise planning than a pile of rocks.
That's the irony of fact 7. When we think of ancient wonders, we look up. We look at the ziggurats, the temples, the obelisks. But the true marvel of the Indus Valley civilization, specifically the city of Mohenjo-Daro, isn't what they built into the sky, it's what they buried underground.
We are talking about the least sexy, most essential invention in urban history.
We're talking about the drain.
A drain.
Specifically, a comprehensive, citywide, hydraulic engineered sewage system.
Which sounds mundane until you realize that the Western world wouldn't match this level of sanitation management until, what, the 20th century?
Pretty much, yeah. We are not talking about a ditch dug behind a hut. We are talking about a civilization that mastered hydroengineering while Europe was still largely figuring out how to stack stones.
And the scale is what makes this fact number 7, isn't it? This wasn't a small village.
No, not at all. The Indus Valley civilization covered 1 million square kilometers. It was larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined.
Wow.
And across this vast area, they implemented a standardized system of urban hygiene.
Okay, so let's get into the specs of Mohenjo-Daro itself. Because civilization is a broad term, but this city was a machine.
It really was.
You look at the layout, and it's not organic. It didn't just grow outward from a market square like medieval London or Paris, which are just, tangled messes of winding alleys.
No, Mohenjo-Daro is a grid. It is rigorously planned. The streets are oriented to the cardinal points north, south, east, west.
Which is brilliant for climate control, by the way. If you align your main boulevards with the prevailing winds, you're basically creating a passive air conditioning system for the city.
Exactly. But that grid implies a central authority. You don't get a grid by accident. You get it because a committee of surveyors sat down and drew lines in the dirt before a single brick was laid.
And speaking of bricks, this is a detail I love. They weren't using sun-dried mud bricks like a lot of their contemporaries.
Right, they used baked bricks, kiln fire.
And not just any random size. They used a standardized ratio 1:2:4.
A brick was a brick. Whether you were in Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, hundreds of miles away, that's industrial standardization in the Bronze Age.
Which is crucial for what we're discussing.
Yeah.
Water. Sun-dried bricks just dissolve if they get wet too often.
They do. If you want to build a system to handle water and waste, you need baked, water-resistant materials. And that brings us to the infrastructure hiding in plain sight.
The plumbing. Now, usually when we talk about ancient hygiene, we talk about the Romans. But the Romans were mostly about public grandeur, the big bathhouses.
Right.
Mohenjo-Daro brings the engineering right into the living room.
It does. Excavations show that private homes, and we're talking about standard middle-class housing here, not just palaces, had purpose-built washrooms.
And the construction details are just incredibly high spec for the time. You walk into one of these washrooms and the floor isn't just dirt or flat stone. It's paved with tightly fitted bricks.
And crucially, the floor is graded. It has a slope.
It's subtle, but it's there.
Gravity is the engine. They sloped the floors toward a specific corner where they installed a drain opening.
And they didn't just use mud mortar, which would leak. The sources indicate they used gypsum mortar or sometimes even bitumen natural asphalt to make these floors watertight.
They were effectively waterproofing their bathrooms so the water wouldn't seep into the foundations or the floor below, which is a level of foresight that, some modern contractors sometimes lack.
I was going to say, but their real Fact 7 magic happens when the water leaves the house.
Yes. In almost every other ancient context, if you had a drain, it just dumped into a cesspit in the yard or directly into the street.
The Gardilu method. Just throw it out the window and hope it doesn't hit a neighbor.
Exactly, a biological time bomb. But here, the house drain connected to a vertical chute, often made of terracotta pipes inside the wall, which then fed into a street-level drain.
But get this. The street drains were covered.
That is the game changer. These were subterranean channels. You could walk down the street and not see, smell, or step in the sewage.
Wow.
They lined the main channels with bricks and covered them with limestone slabs or brick arches. But they didn't seal them permanently. This is the detail that blows my mind. They built inspection covers.
You're kidding. Manholes. They invented the manhole.
Effectively, yes. They left access points so that solid waste could be removed, because they understood that if you just flush everything into a pipe and never clean it, it clogs. They had a system where solids would settle in a sump pit or a jar before the liquid overflowed into the main street drain.
That is basically a septic tank mechanism. They were separating solids from liquids to keep the flow velocity high.
It demonstrates a practical understanding of fluid dynamics. In fact, some of the main drains had a U-shaped bottom or a tapered cross-section.
Which, for the engineers listening, is critical. A flat bottom drain, low water flow, you get blockage in the corners.
But a U-shape, a tighter hydraulic radius, maintains the velocity of the water even when the volume is low. It makes the drain self-cleaning.
That is sophisticated hydraulic theory applied 4,500 years ago. They weren't just digging ditches, they were observing how water moves and designing around the physics.
Exactly.
I thought the last one was wild, but this next fact changed my entire perspective on what daily life actually felt like back then.
I can see why.
We can talk about brooks and slopes all day, but we need to put you in the scene to really understand why this matters.
Let's do it.
So strip away the modern world. You are a resident of Mohenjo-Daro in 2500 BCE. It's hot. This is the Indus Valley. Temperatures are soaring.
You've been working maybe at the bead workshop or trading down at the river. You come home to a 2-story brick house. You climb the stairs to the upper floor.
And you step into your private washroom. It's cool, shaded by thick brick walls. You take a jar of water to rinse off the dust.
You pour the water, and instead of creating a mud puddle, the water hits those tight, asphalt-sealed joints. It sheets across the floor, following that engineered gradient.
And swirls into the terracotta opening in the corner.
Yeah.
You hear that gurgle, the sound of suction. The water vanishes into the wall.
It travels down a vertical terracotta pipe, basically the Bronze Age equivalent of PVC, and joins an invisible river of waste flowing beneath the pavement outside.
And then you walk out the front door. This is where the contrast really hits. In almost any other era of history, walking out the door meant assaulting your senses.
Oh, absolutely. If you walk out the door in medieval York or ancient Athens or even 19th century Manhattan, the smell is the first thing that hits you. Open gutters, stagnant pools, flies everywhere.
But in Mohenjo-Daro, the air is clearer. The streets are dry. You are walking on paved brick surfaces.
Yeah.
The waste is moving, but it is segregated from human contact.
It is a triumph of preventative medicine, even if they didn't know what a germ was.
And this is where the comparison becomes, frankly, embarrassing for the timeline. We have this arrogant assumption that history is a steady upward line. We think, we are smart, they were primitive.
Right.
But if you take that Mohenjo-Daro citizen and teleport them to London in 1850,
they would be absolutely appalled.
It's actually shocking. Victorian London is the capital of the largest empire the world had ever seen. They have steam engines, the telegraph, factories. But in 1858, they have the Great Stink,
which was a literal historical event. The Thames River was essentially an open sewer. It was so thick with human waste and industrial sludge that the smell paralyzed the city.
The politicians in Parliament, in the literal seat of global power, couldn't conduct business. They were soaking curtains in chloride of lime just to stop themselves from vomiting.
Meanwhile, the drinking water was being pulled from that same river system. London was trapped in a cycle of cholera and dysentery because they hadn't solved this basic problem.
It took the Great Stink to finally force London to build a modern sewer system. That was 1858 AD. The engineers in Mohenjo-Daro had solved that problem around 2600 BCE.
It's a 4,000-year gap
Yeah.
where, in some very real ways, urban living standards actually went backward.
And we should address Rome here, because Rome always gets the credit for plumbing. What about the aqueducts?
Rome was great at supply. They could bring clean water in from miles away.
But their disposal system wasn't nearly as democratic.
Precisely. Rome had the Cloaca Maxima, the big sewer, but it was mostly for draining swampland and storm runoff. Private homes rarely connected to it.
So if you were a regular Roman citizen in an apartment block, a regular insula,
You got a chamber pot, and you likely dumped it into a vat under the stairs or, right into the street.
whereas in the Indus Valley, this connectivity seems to have been standard. It wasn't just for the king, it was for the neighborhood.
And that leads us to the biggest mystery of Fact 7, the unencrypted script.
This is the frustrating part. We can read hieroglyphics, we can read cuneiform, we cannot read the Indus script.
No idea. We have thousands of seals with these symbols on them, and we have no idea what they say. We don't know the names of their kings, their gods, or their laws.
Which means we have to infer their values entirely from their architecture. We have to read the bricks, so to speak.
And when you do that, the infrastructure tells a very specific story about what the society valued.
Well, let's look at what is missing. We don't find massive golden palaces for a single ruler. We don't find gigantic temples that would have required thousands of slaves to build.
Right. In Egypt, the surplus resources went into the pyramids tombs for the elite. In Mesopotamia, they went into ziggurats. In Mohenjo-Daro, the surplus labor and engineering genius went into the sewers.
That is a profound statement on priority. They invested in the public good.
It suggests an egalitarian ethos. The modular housing, the standardized brick sizes, the citywide access to water and drainage. It paints a picture of a society that believed the basic necessities of life should be available to the many, not just the few.
It's the ultimate form of public health. I am not safe unless my neighbor is sanitary.
Even if they didn't understand germ theory, they clearly understood the concept of ritual purity and physical cleanliness. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro supports this.
Right, the big pool.
It's the closest thing they have to a temple, but it's a pool. A watertight, brick-lined tank for presumably ritual bathing. Water was central to their ideology.
But then the tragedy hits, and this is the part that I find genuinely unsettling. Around 1900 BCE, the civilization starts to fade.
The river shifted, the climate changed, trade collapsed. We don't know the exact mix of causes, but the cities emptied out.
And then knowledge evaporated.
This is the fragility of progress. We assume that once a good idea like a covered drain is invented, it stays invented because it's so obviously useful.
But it didn't. When the Indus cities were abandoned, the concept of systemic urban planning died with them. The people who moved in afterwards built simpler structures on top of the ruins, completely ignoring the drainage grid.
It was a hard reset. Humanity spent the next few millennia walking through filth, suffering from preventable waterborne diseases, because the social structure required to maintain such a complex system had collapsed.
It really highlights that technology isn't just about the invention itself, it's about the society that sustains it.
Exactly. You can have the best pipes in the world, but if you don't have the Department of Public Works to unclog them, you eventually lose the technology. The pipes clog, the streets flood, people go back to digging pits, and 2 generations later, no one remembers what the pipes were for.
So when we look at Mohenjo-Daro, how does that change our definition of a great city?
We usually define greatness by the skyline. We look for the tallest tower, the biggest stadium, the most gold leaf.
But Fact 7 argues that greatness is what happens under your feet.
I would argue that the true measure of a civilization is how it treats its waste. It's unglamorous, but it's the foundation of human dignity. Can you live in a dense urban environment without getting sick? The Indus Valley proved you could do it 4,500 years ago.
It completely flips the script on primitive versus modern.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder what we are doing right now that future archaeologists will look at and just shake their heads.
That's the haunting question. Maybe they'll look at our reliance on single-use plastics. Or maybe they'll look at our water usage.
Oh, that's a good one. We literally use potable drinking quality water to flush away our waste.
A future archaeologist might find that insane. They spent billions purifying this water just to contaminate it immediately and send it away. It's a massive inefficiency that we just accept as normal.
Just like the Victorians accepted the smell of the Thames as normal.
Precisely. We are always blind to our own inefficiencies until we look back. Mohenjo-Daro is a reminder that there are other ways to organize a life, and that progress isn't guaranteed.
It's a humbling thought. The most advanced thing in the ancient world wasn't a golden mask or a cursed tomb. It was the silent, efficient gurgle of a drain in a brick floor.
The sound of a civilization that actually worked for its people?
We're halfway through, and a pattern is starting to emerge. But fact number 6 pulls back the curtain on a secret that most people walk past every single day without ever noticing. Welcome back. We are moving deeper into our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 6.
And we are shifting gears completely here. We're leaving behind the massive city planning and, the macro engineering of the last few facts.
Yeah.
This next one, it requires us to zoom in. Way, way in.
I love this one because it's where history just crashes right into science fiction. I thought the plumbing in Mohenjo-Daro was impressive, but this literally changes the molecular structure of history.
It really, really does. We are talking about the legendary Damascus steel.
The stuff of legend.
Right.
Even if you aren't a history buff, you've probably seen the pattern, that rippled, watery look on a blade.
It's iconic.
But we're not talking about the modern knockoffs you buy in a kitchen store. We're talking about the original medieval weaponry from the Middle East.
Exactly. The 13th to the 17th centuries. This is the absolute peak of the craft. And to understand why this is fact number 6, you have to understand the reputation these things have. Crusaders would come back to Europe with absolute horror stories about these swords. They claimed a Damascus blade could slice through a European knight's sword.
And the arm holding it.
And the arm holding it like it was butter.
There's that famous story, it's probably apocryphal, but it makes the point, where a leader drops a silk scarf on the edge of the blade.
And it just cuts the silk.
Just from the weight of the fabric falling.
And whether that scarf story is true or not, the metallurgical reality was just as wild. You have to remember, sword making is always a game of compromises. It's the ultimate paradox.
Right, that trade-off. Hardness versus flexibility. If you make steel hard enough to hold a razor edge, it usually becomes brittle. Like glass. If you hit a shield or another sword, it just shatters.
Exactly. But then if you make it soft enough to take that impact and not break, well, it can't hold an edge.
Right, you're sharpening it constantly, or just bends in the middle of a fight, which is a nightmare for a soldier.
But Damascus steel, it somehow cheated physics. It did both.
And for centuries, nobody knew how. In fact, the specific recipe was lost around the 18th century.
Yeah, the chain of transmission it just broke. Modern science spent decades trying to replicate it. Mixing metals, messing with cooling rates.
And they could never get it quite right.
Never. They could make it look right, with the acid etching, but it didn't perform right.
Until the early 2000s. And this is the part that just blows my mind. Researchers decided to stop just looking at the pattern.
And started looking inside the steel.
With a high-resolution electron microscope.
And that is when they found something that technically shouldn't exist in the 17th century.
What was it?
They found carbon nanotubes.
Wait, what? Carbon nanotubes? Hold on. We're talking about the same stuff we discussed today with, space elevators and next-gen microchips.
The very same. Cylinders of carbon atoms arranged in a perfect hexagonal lattice. It's one of the strongest structures known to science.
It has a tensile strength that makes steel look like Play-Doh.
It really does. And here it was, inside a sword forged by a guy using a charcoal fire and a hammer in the Middle Ages.
That is... It's almost insulting to modern material science. We have clean rooms and lasers, and we struggle with this. So, okay, how does a nanotube actually help a sword? Is it just acting like some kind of super strong filler?
Oh, it's much more structural than that. What was happening was the nanotubes were encapsulating nanowires of something called cementite. Now, cementite is an incredibly hard, but very brittle iron carbide compound.
Okay, so the cementite is the razor edge part of the equation. Hard, but fragile.
Right. But by wrapping it in these carbon nanotubes, the steel became a natural nanocomposite.
Kind of like rebar in concrete.
That is the perfect analogy. The nanotubes provided this flexible, super strong skeleton that held all the hard, sharp bits in place.
So that's how you get a sword that acts like a razor, but absorbs shock like a spring.
Exactly. The nanotubes, they stop the cracks from spreading.
So it's a self-healing structure, in a way, or at least a crack-resistant one.
Precisely. And it explains the magical properties the Crusaders were so afraid of. Their swords were just, chunks of iron compared to this sophisticated molecular composite.
Okay, but here is the million-dollar question.
Yep.
And this is the part that keeps me up at night.
Right.
These smiths didn't have electron microscopes. They didn't know what a carbon atom was, let alone a nanotube. They were operating on, alchemy and tradition.
Mm-hmm.
How on earth did they manufacture nanotechnology?
They were accidental geniuses. It comes down to a perfect storm of raw materials and process. And this is where the detective work gets so fascinating. The researchers realized it wasn't just the technique, it was the dirt.
The dirt.
The impurities. The Smiths were importing this Wootz steel from India, and this was a specific type of crucible steel that was already famous for being high quality. But, crucially, the ore from this specific region in India had trace impurities.
Like what?
Minute amounts of vanadium, chromium, manganese.
Which is funny because usually impurities are the enemy in steelmaking. You spend all your time trying to refine them out to get pure iron.
Not here. In this specific chemical stew, these impurities acted as catalysts.
So the vanadium is basically the match that starts the fire for the nanotubes.
In a way, yes. When the Smiths cycled the heat, and this is the other half of the secret, they had this very complex thermal cycle. They would heat the blade to a specific glowing color, hammer it, cool it, fold it, heat it again.
The molecular dance.
It really was. This cycling of temperature, combined with the presence of those specific impurities, encouraged the carbon atoms to assemble themselves into these tube structures.
Wow.
If they got it too hot, the nanotubes would dissolve. If they didn't get it hot enough, they just wouldn't form.
So they were orchestrating atoms by eye. They were looking at the color of the metal in a dim workshop, cherry red or blood red, and just knowing by the feel of the hammer hitting the metal that it was ready.
It's been described in the source material as Renaissance painters accidentally synthesizing antibiotics while mixing pigments.
I love that image.
Imagine Da Vinci, right? He's mixing ochre and oil, and somehow he creates penicillin because of a specific mold that was in the oil. He wouldn't know why it worked.
No idea.
He'd just know that if he used this specific oil from this specific merchant, the painting lasted longer.
Or that other analogy, like building a working nuclear reactor using only medieval alchemy texts.
It just emphasizes the sheer absurdity of the achievement. We struggle to manufacture carbon nanotubes today. We need vacuum chambers, inert gases, plasma torches.
And these smiths did it in an open forge with charcoal.
But they did it consistently. That's the thing. It wasn't a one-off fluke. They produced thousands of these blades over centuries.
Which brings us to the tragedy of the story. Because if it was that good, if it was the pinnacle of military technology, why did we stop making it?
And this is where we get into the whole concept of tacit knowledge.
Ah, yes. Okay, let's unpack that for a second because it's a crucial distinction.
It's the key of the whole thing.
Explicit knowledge is the stuff we write down. E equals mc squared. The recipe for a chemically perfect cake.
Right. Explicit knowledge can be transferred easily. I can hand you a manual, and if you follow it, you get the result. But tacit knowledge, it's embodied, it's feel.
It's the baker knowing the dough is ready just by poking it, not by looking at a timer.
It's the apprentice watching the master for 20 years, learning the rhythm of the hammer, the smell of the fire.
So the Damascus process wasn't a chemical formula, it was a ritual.
It was almost entirely tacit. The Smiths didn't have a periodic table, they just had a set of instructions passed down from father to son. Take the woots from this specific mine in India, add these leaves.
Maybe pomegranate peel or cassia bark.
Heat it until it looks like the setting sun.
And that works perfectly fine as long as nothing changes.
But systems are fragile. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the world changed. Trade routes shifted. Political instability in India meant the mines changed hands.
And the specific veins of ore that produced that vanadium-rich Wootz steel, they ran dry, or the supply was just cut off.
So the Smiths get new ore, and maybe it looks the same. Maybe it even smells the same.
And they do the exact same process. Same fire, same hammer, same folding, same prayers. No nanotubes.
No catalysts. Without that trace vanadium, the chemistry fails. The carbon doesn't form the lattice. The sword is just a sword.
That is just heartbreaking. I mean, imagine being that master smith.
Mhm.
You are doing everything exactly the way your grandfather
Yeah.
taught you. You are the keeper of the secret. And suddenly, it just stops working.
They must have been devastated because they didn't understand the atomic reason it worked. They couldn't adapt. They couldn't just say, oh, the new ore is low in vanadium. Let's just add a pinch of powder.
They just thought the gods had abandoned them, or that they'd lost their touch.
And so the art died.
It vanished. We went from having the most advanced nanocomposite material on Earth to not having it for 200 years.
It's a terrifying lesson in how fragile civilization is. We assume progress is a straight line. We learn things, we write them down, we keep them forever, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
But this proves that you can climb down from the shoulders. We can actually regress.
It makes you wonder, how much of our world runs on tacit knowledge today? We like to think we're purely scientific, but are we?
Oh, absolutely not. I think about this with legacy technology all the time.
Exactly. Think about complex manufacturing or old mainframe code that runs the banking system. There are guys with gray beards who are the only ones who know how to kick the machine in just the right way to keep it running.
And if that guy retires, the knowledge just leaves the building with him.
Or look at the Apollo missions. I was reading recently that we are struggling to recreate the F-1 engines that took us to the moon.
No way.
Yeah, we have the blueprints, we have the explicit knowledge, but we lost the tacit knowledge, the specific way the welding was done by hand, the specific intuition of the engineers in the 1960s.
We have superior computers and better materials, but we lost the knack.
We lost the craft. In the case of Damascus steel, we had to wait for our microscopes to catch up to their intuition. It really challenges the definition of knowing. The modern scientist can explain the nanotube, but the medieval smith could actually make it. So who really knew more?
That's a heavy question. The scientist has the theory, but the smith had the result.
And the result is what matters in a sword fight.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a celebration of human ingenuity, though trial and error on a massive, massive scale. It shows that you don't always need to understand the why to master the how.
But it's also a warning that we aren't immune to a dark age where we forget how our own tools work.
The idea that we could be surrounded by the artifacts of our own civilization, our silicon chips, our pharmaceuticals, and future generations might look at them like magic items they can't reproduce.
They had magic and then they forgot the spell.
It's entirely possible if we don't respect the nuance of the craft.
But there is a hopeful flip side to this too.
Which is?
The potential for discovery is everywhere. Even in the past, the researchers who found the nanotubes, they weren't looking for a new discovery. They were looking at an antique. They were looking at a museum piece.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder what else is hiding in museum basements, just waiting for the right kind of lens to look at it.
Or what primitive technologies we've dismissed as superstition or folklore are actually operating on a chemical or physical level we just haven't grasped yet.
Maybe that Roman concrete that hardens in seawater.
Exactly. Or the acoustical properties of ancient amphitheaters. We tend to have a chronological snobbery. We think because we are smarter.
Yeah, we do.
But the guys in the Damascus workshops were doing quantum mechanics in a shed. They were manipulating matter at the atomic scale. They just used a different vocabulary for it.
The nanotech swords. A seamless blend of medieval craftsmanship and futuristic physics. It's definitely earned its spot at number 6.
It certainly has. It's one of those facts that makes the world feel a little more deeply layered, like there are secrets right under our noses.
Absolutely. It makes me want to go find an old rusty spoon and put it under a microscope. Who knows what's in there?
Probably just tetanus in that case.
Fair point. But the spirit of inquiry remains. Okay, take a breath. Because if you think invisible carbon nanotubes and a medieval sword are mind-bending, wait until you hear what's next.
We are definitely crossing a threshold here.
We are entering the top 5. From here on out, every fact we cover is a complete paradigm shift. Let's look at fact number 5, the discovery that changed how we define life itself. Welcome back. We are moving deeper into our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 5.
It is good to be back. And, when I look at where we've been, facts 10 through 6, we saw some truly incredible things.
Absolutely. The garden cities under the Amazon, that Damascus steel.
Right. But I have to say, crossing into the top 5, it just feels different.
It really does. It feels like the training wheels are coming off.
Yeah.
The stakes just feel higher.
They are, because the items we're discussing today, they represent a fundamental shift in the narrative. These aren't just, Isolated ruins or some cool artifacts to put in a glass case.
No.
These are challenges. They challenge our timeline, they challenge our maps, and they challenge our whole understanding of what human beings were actually capable of thousands of years ago.
And that really is the mission for this deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're trying to uncover these lost superpowers, these hidden technologies, and the invisible networks to prove that humans have always been more advanced, more connected, and just.
Right.
Frankly, more complicated than we give them credit for. So let's not waste a second. Fact number 5. You've called this the Singapore of the ancient world.
The Kingdom of Aksum.
Okay, I have to be honest with you. When I think of an ancient empire, my brain it has a default setting. It screams Rome, maybe Persia.
Yeah.
If I'm really stretching, maybe the Han Dynasty in China. But Aksum, I usually just get a blank stare. But looking at the data, this place in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, it was an absolute juggernaut.
A complete powerhouse from the 1st to the 7th century.
So why is it so often left off the list?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Part of it is just it's an accident of preservation. Aksum didn't have generations of European archaeologists, obsessing over it like they did with Rome.
Right.
But a huge part of it is narrative bias. For a long time, historians basically wrote Africa out of the story of classical civilization. They assumed African states must have been a peripheral or
tributaries to the real powers.
Yeah, exactly. But Aksum just demolishes that fiction. It wasn't a side character. It was a main protagonist for 600 years.
Okay, so let's substantiate that.
Yeah.
If I'm a trader, say in the year 300 CE, what does Aksum look like to me? Is it just another stopover?
To understand that, you have to look at the geography. Aksum wasn't just a powerful state. It was a gatekeeper.
Okay.
I want you to just imagine you're standing at the port of Adulis right around the year 300.
Yep.
It's hot. The Red Sea is this brilliant azure blue in front of you. And the harbor is it's absolute gridlock.
But not just local boats, I'm guessing.
No, that's the key. You look one way, you see Roman merchant ships with those heavy square-rigged sails. You look another way, there are Indian vessels heavy with pepper and cinnamon. You've got Arabian dhows.
And the smell.
Oh, the air smells like frankincense, which was basically the oil of the ancient world, and spices. It's a babble of languages: Greek, Persian, Geese.
And that sensory overload, that tells you everything. It controlled the commercial jugular between the Roman Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean.
The commercial jugular. That's exactly it. See, Rome and Persia were the big dogs on the block, right?
Right.
But they were constantly exhausted, just fighting each other over territory in Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, Aksum is sitting comfortably south of all that, holding the keys to the Red Sea. If you wanted Roman gold to buy Indian silk or African ivory to end up in a Chinese workshop, it had to pass through Aksumite hands.
But hold on. Being a middleman, that can be a pretty precarious position. If you just sit there and tax people, eventually someone stronger comes along and takes your spot. How do we know they were a true power and not just a toll booth?
That is a crucial distinction. A weak middleman gets conquered. A strong middleman sets the terms. And the best evidence that Aksum set the terms, the coinage.
They minted their own gold coins.
Minted gold coins. In the ancient world, minting gold coinage is the ultimate flex. It's a sign of total economic sovereignty.
It's saying, my economy is so stable, my treasury is so deep, that you will trust this piece of metal anywhere on Earth.
Precisely. They were one of the first African states outside the Mediterranean sphere to do this. And these coins, they circulate everywhere. India, Sri Lanka. It was a universal language of commercial power, kind of like the US dollar is today.
That really puts it in perspective. It wasn't just a trading post, it was a central bank.
Exactly. And they were culturally distinct, too. We're not talking about a tribe, we're talking about a sophisticated state. They adopted Christianity in the 4th century under King Izana.
Which makes Aksum one of the earliest officially Christian states in the world.
Right, roughly at the same time as the Roman Empire's own conversion. They were building monumental stone stelae, these massive obelisks carved from single pieces of rock, and they had a literate court.
So did the other big powers at the time, did they respect them? Or did they just see them as others?
Oh, they respected them deeply. In fact, the prophet Mani, who founded Manichaeism back in the 3rd century, he famously listed the 4 great powers of the world.
And let me guess.
He didn't say Rome and the rest. He listed Rome, Persia, China, and Aksum.
That right there, that's the aha moment for me. If they were top 4 universally recognized as a superpower by their own contemporaries, it just highlights how much of history is determined by who writes the textbooks centuries later.
It's exactly that. We forgot them because they didn't fit the Eurocentric story we wanted to tell for the last few hundred years. but the archaeology is correcting the record.
The evidence for what we just discussed is undeniable, but it leads us to an even bigger question. Fact number 4 isn't just a theory, it's a visible, tangible miracle of the natural world.
Well, hold on a second. When you say miracle of the natural world, usually we're thinking of, the Grand Canyon or Mount Everest.
True.
But this miracle is strictly industrial. It is geometry imposed on the natural world.
We're talking about the Red Snake, the Great Wall of Gorgon.
Located in northern Iran, built by the Sasanian Empire probably around the 5th or 6th century.
Now, everybody knows the Great Wall of China. It's the celebrity of walls. It gets all the press. But the Red Snake, this thing seems to fascinate engineers and logistics experts even more. It's about 121 miles long, which is a lot shorter than the Chinese Wall. But the density of it, it's just mind-blowing.
That is the key distinction. The Great Wall of China is magnificent, but it's a patchwork, right? It was built over centuries by different dynasties using different materials, stone here, rammed earth there. It sort of evolved organically.
But the Wall of Gorgon is different.
Completely different. It is a single, standardized industrial project.
Built all at once.
Likely in a single generation, maybe even under a single ruler. And the materials are consistent. It isn't a pile of rocks. It's made of fired red bricks, hundreds of millions of them.
And they're standardized.
Same size, same shape, same weight.
That implies a supply chain that rivals modern manufacturing. You can't just make 100 million bricks in your backyard.
No, and this is the part that just blew my mind when I was reading the archaeological reports. They found the kilns. They didn't just haul bricks from a city. They built the factory right on the line.
You're kidding.
They found remnants of thousands of kilns spaced, get this, 40 to 100 meters apart along the entire length of the wall.
Wait, spaced every 100 meters?
Yeah.
For 120 miles?
Yes. Just think about the logistics of that for a moment. You aren't just building a wall, you're building a linear industrial complex the size of a province. You have to coordinate fuel, clay, water, and labor for maybe 30,000 workers, all while maintaining a defensive perimeter.
And you mentioned water. The source material says there was a canal.
A massive canal running parallel to the wall about 5 meters deep. And it served a dual purpose. It was a moat, sure, but it was also the plumbing for the whole project.
It brought water to the brick sites and the soldiers. It paints this terrifying picture of the Sasanian state. Imagine standing there looking out at the endless steppe to the north. You're a Sasanian guard. You look left, you look right, and you just see this ribbon of crimson brick stretching to the horizon. Smoke rising from fortress after fortress. It feels incredibly modern in its organization.
It's overwhelming, but here's the darker question. Why build it?
To keep the Huns out.
Yeah.
Nomads.
That's the functional reason, sure. But walls of this scale, they're rarely just about tactics. They are about psychological theater.
Psychological theater. That sounds like something a modern politician would do.
It is exactly the same instinct. It's about projecting state power to soothe internal anxiety. You have the civilized world on one side and the chaotic nomads on the other. The Sasanian Empire was powerful, but it felt threatened.
So building a wall that precise, that massive, is a way of saying we control reality.
Precisely. It creates a line between us and them that feels permanent, even if it isn't. The Red Snake didn't save the Sasanian Empire from the Islamic conquest that came from the south, but for a moment, it turned a vague frontier into solid geometry.
It's a monument to anxiety as much as it is to engineering.
In many ways, yes. But the engineering remains undeniable. A heavy industry project in an era we usually associate with, subsistence farming.
Okay, so we've gone from a 121-mile wall, massive scale, huge labor force, to something you can literally hold in the palm of your hand. But this little thing might be even more controversial. Let's pivot to fact number 3, the Baghdad Battery.
Ah, the most controversial clay jar in history.
I love this one because it's so unassuming. It's a small yellow clay jar, about the size of your fist. Inside, there's a copper cylinder, and inside that, an iron rod. It was found near Baghdad, dating to the Parthian or Sasanian period.
So roughly the same era as our wall.
Exactly. And the theory, of course, is that this is a battery.
A 2,000-year-old battery.
Right. If you fill it with vinegar or wine, some kind of acid, the chemistry says it works. It acts as a galvanic cell. You can get a voltage. You can get a spark.
You can. Modern replicas prove that the physics works. If you wire a few of them together, you can generate enough current to feel a tingle or maybe electroplate of very small objects.
That is electric.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
But seriously, imagine an ancient priest or a smith using this to electroplate gold onto silver. The source mentions, we love this idea of lost high tech. It gives me that Indiana Jones feeling. Like, what else did they have?
I know, and I really hate to be the one to pour cold water on this, or vinegar.
Uh-oh.
But we have to apply our critical lens here, because this is where we have to distinguish between what is possible and what actually happened.
Here comes the expert reality check.
It's my job. Look, physically, yes, it can generate voltage. That's a fact of chemistry. But archaeologically, there is zero evidence. We have never found a single item from that era that was electroplated. No wires, no systematic setups of these jars connected together, nothing that suggests they knew what they had.
So if they didn't know it was a battery, what was it?
The boring answer? It might have been for storing scrolls. The metal tube could protect a papyrus from moisture, or maybe it held magical liquids for rituals. The shape is consistent with other storage vessels.
But that's so disappointing. A scroll jar is boring. A battery is a revolution.
But is it disappointing? I think the disappointment is the interesting part. The Baghdad battery is a Rorschach test for us. We want it to be a battery because we equate intelligence with modern technology.
That's a fair point. We project our own tech tree onto them.
Exactly. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say they did use it to make a spark. Maybe a priest used it to shock a worshiper during a mystery ritual, to prove the presence of a god.
That would be terrifying.
It would. But even if they did that, it touches on a bigger philosophical point. It's the difference between tacit knowledge and explicit science. You can do something without understanding the theory behind it. Even if they made sparks, did they understand the electron? Did they understand current?
Probably not. So it's more like a magic trick than engineering.
Precisely. It's a ghost technology. It might have been there physically, but the understanding required to scale it up, it just wasn't present.
Well, speaking of ghosts, that brings us to a perfect transition. We're moving from a ghost technology that might not exist to a ghost population that definitely does. Fact number 2, the genetic ghost.
This is where the science gets really personal. This isn't about jars or walls anymore. This is about us.
So walk us through this. This came from a relatively recent genetic study on West African populations, right?
Correct. Geneticists were analyzing modern DNA from populations in West Africa, specifically the Yoruba and Mende peoples. They were using new statistical models, and they found an anomaly.
An anomaly.
In some populations, about 2% to as much as 19% of their genetic ancestry comes from, well, nobody knows.
When you say nobody knows, you mean it doesn't match current humans.
It doesn't match current humans, it doesn't match Neanderthals, and it doesn't match Denisovans.
So it's a fourth player.
A fourth player, a ghost population.
Really?
An archaic human group that we have absolutely no fossils for. No bones, no skulls, no cave paintings. The only place they exist is in the code.
That is haunting. It's like finding a new primary color in a painting that you can't actually see.
Yeah.
Or finding a missing pixel in a photograph of a human face.
It forces us to completely rethink the family tree. We used to have this simple idea, right? Humans evolved in Africa, then we left, then we replaced everyone else. A nice, clean, branching tree.
But this shows it was more of a tangled web.
A tangled web, yes. We aren't just Homo sapiens, we're a coalition. We're a mix.
Yeah.
This ghost group split from our ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago, lived alongside us, and then at some point, maybe as recently as 43,000 years ago, they met our ancestors and had children.
And then they just vanished.
Physically, yes, they went extinct. But genetically, they are still here. They're hitchhiking in the genome of millions of modern people.
That's the part that gets me. This isn't a statue in a museum. This isn't a wall in Iran. This is in people. It has this weird intimacy to it.
It does. It shatters any idea of purity. There is no pure human lineage. We are all a palimpsest, a manuscript that's been written over again and again by migrations and meetings with species that don't exist anymore.
It makes you wonder who they were. Did they have names, songs, stories?
We don't know. They are the missing pixels. But without them, the picture of humanity just isn't complete.
Incredible. So we've looked at the internal network of our DNA, this web inside us. Now for our final fact, our number 1, we need to look at the external network, the one that connected the entire ancient world.
This is it. Fact number 1, the first global network.
Or as you like to call it, the Bronze Age Internet.
The Bronze Age Internet.
This is the big reveal. We tend to think globalization is new. We think the internet, shipping containers, fiber optics, that's what connected the world. Fact number 1 says, nope.
And not at all. Long before digital packets, the world was connected by a complex, high-speed web of trade, and the best evidence for this is a shipwreck.
The Uluburun shipwreck.
Late 14th century BCE,
Yeah.
found off the coast of Turkey. This ship is basically a crashed server.
A crash server. I love that analogy. Explain that.
Well, think about it. It was a single node in the network that went down. And because it sank, we can see exactly what data, what cargo is flowing through the system at that one exact moment. And it's mind-blowing.
I'm looking at the manifest list here. It wasn't just carrying local goods. It was carrying copper from Cyprus, tin from Central Asia, ivory from Africa, glass, even amber from the Baltic Sea.
All on one boat. That single ship proves that by 1300 BCE, you had a supply chain stretching from Afghanistan to Northern Europe to Africa.
I want to just visualize this for a second. The source describes the marketplace at around 2000 BCE. So you're standing there, you see a merchant selling lapis lazuli. That blue stone only comes from one place.
Afghanistan.
You see carnelian beads from the Indus Valley in India.
And you see tin. And this is the so what of the entire Bronze Age. This is why the network wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity.
Why is tin so important? We think of tin cans, it seems so cheap.
It's important because of the name, the Bronze Age. You cannot make bronze without copper and tin. Bronze was the plastic, the steel, and the silicon of its day. It made the weapons, the tools, the status symbols. But here's the geological catch.
Copper and tin almost never sit together in the ground.
Exactly. Copper is in Cyprus, tin is in Afghanistan or Turkey, or all the way over in Britain.
So to make the metal that defined the entire era,
you had to have international trade. Civilization itself required this network. You couldn't just stay in your village and be advanced, you had to connect. Isolation was impossible if you wanted to survive as a state.
that completely flips the script. We usually think of ancient people as isolated, living in their little bubbles, and we are the connected ones. But you're saying isolation is the anomaly.
It is the anomaly. Humans have always been networked creatures. The global village isn't some futuristic concept we're moving toward. It's our default state. We're just returning to it, only a lot faster.
The Bronze Age network moved goods at the speed of a camel or a sail. Ours moves information at the speed of light. But the structural dependency, it's the same.
It's the same impulse to connect, to exchange, to weave ourselves into a larger pattern.
So we have counted down the top 5. Let's just look at the board. We had Aksum, the economic superpower written out of history. The Wall of Gorgon, a monument to industrial geometry and state anxiety. The Baghdad Battery, the gadget that challenges our definition of knowledge. The ghost DNA, the ancestor hiding in our cells. And finally, the inescapable network that binds us all.
It is a staggering list.
It really is. And it makes you look at the modern world a little differently.
It does. And if I can, I'd like to leave you with one final thought.
Please.
We just talked about the Bronze Age network. It was robust, it was global, it was essential. And then around 1177 BCE, it collapsed. It's known as the Late Bronze Age collapse.
Right.
The connections were severed, the world went dark for centuries. We forgot the Empire of Aksum, we forgot the technology of the battery. We lost the recipe for how to build the world.
That is a heavy realization.
It is.
Yeah.
So, here's the question. What parts of our unforgettable global civilization are currently fragile? We're building networks, but we are also building walls, like the red snake. If our network goes down, if our server crashes, what will the future remember of us? Will we be a ghost in the data or just a ruin in the sand?
A chilling but necessary thought. That is why we do this. Thank you for taking this deep dive into the extraordinary with us. Stay curious.
Welcome back. We are moving deeper into our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 4.
Okay, so we're cracking the top 5. And honestly, this is where our typical view of history really hits a wall.
Literally a wall in this case.
Literally a brick wall that we just, completely forgot existed.
It's so strange, isn't it? Because we all have this idea of great walls. You think of Hadrian's Wall, which in some places is, let's be honest, a low stone fence.
Right.
And then, of course, you have the Great Wall of China. But this thing we're talking about today, the Great Wall of Gorgon, it's arguably a more sophisticated piece of engineering than either of them for its time.
I would completely agree. The Gorgon Wall, or the Red Snake, as it's sometimes called, it just changes how you have to think about late antiquity. We're in northern Iran, Sasanian Empire, around the 5th or 6th century CE.
And let's just set the stage for a second, because when people hear ancient Iran, they're often thinking about, the Persians fighting the Greeks at Thermopylae.
300 era, yeah.
But the Sasanians, they were a different beast. They were the other superpower on the map, the ones who looked Rome right in the eye.
And did not blink. They were the great rivals of the Byzantine Empire. But while they had this huge front with the Romans to their west, they had a much more unpredictable problem to the north.
The steppes.
The steppes. that endless sea of grass.
And that's exactly where this wall is. It runs about 195 kilometers, so what, 121 miles?
Roughly, yeah, from the Caspian Sea straight to the Pishkamar Mountains.
So it literally plugs a geographic gap, a giant choke point.
The ultimate choke point. But what makes the Red Snake so different isn't just where it is, it's what it's made of. Most walls back then were, packed earth, maybe some rubble.
Cheap and easy.
Exactly. The Sasanians decided to build their 121-mile line out of standardized fired red bricks.
Which is, that's just an insane decision from a resource perspective. Mud brick is free. You just need sun. Fired brick requires fuel, kilns, labor.
A ton of fuel. It means they were building for permanence. They were building something to last against the weather, against time. Mud brick just washes away.
So the Red Snake nickname, that's literal. It's a wall of red bricks.
It is. And just imagine being a soldier there, say in 550 CE. You look south and you see the empire. Green, irrigated fields, orchards, civilization.
Order, taxable land.
Right. Then you turn around, you look north over that crimson wall, and you just see grass, an ocean of it, rippling to the horizon. And out of that ocean came the raiders.
And this wasn't some vague threat. This was personal for them. We're talking about the Hephthalites, the White Huns.
Yes. The Sasanian king Perez I had been killed fighting them in 484 CE. The whole empire was humiliated. So this wall wasn't a vanity project. It was a reaction to a deep national trauma.
Okay, so they decide to build this massive barrier. But here is where things take a sharp turn regarding the engineering, because the part that really floored me wasn't even the wall itself.
Ah, you're talking about the canal.
The canal. It's enormous. A 5-meter deep channel running right alongside the wall.
And this is the genius of it. Most people would just assume, oh, it's a moat, a big defensive ditch.
And it was, I assume.
It definitely worked that way. Cavalry can't exactly charge across a 5-meter trench.
Yeah.
But that wasn't its main job. Its main job was logistics. It was a water main.
For the garrisons, you have this massive line of forts, but the soldiers need water. How many troops are we talking about?
The estimates, based on the fort density, are somewhere between 15,000 and 36,000 soldiers.
36,000. That's the population of a major city spread out over 100 miles of frontier. You can't just bring them all bottled water.
No. So you bring the river to them. They diverted water from the Gorgon River and channeled it all the way along the wall. But think about the math for that.
The gradient.
The gradient. To keep water flowing for that distance with no pumps, you need a perfect, gentle slope. Too shallow, the water gets stagnant. Too steep, and it erodes the canal, your whole defensive ditch collapses.
They had to nail that Goldilocks gradient for over 100 miles. That's a level of surveying that, frankly, rivals Roman aqueducts.
In some ways, it's even more impressive because of the terrain. And there's another layer to it. It wasn't just a moat and a water supply, it was industrial. You mentioned the fired bricks.
You need water to make the clay mixture.
You need tons of it, and you need it right there, on site. You can't ship millions of bricks from a capital city. The evidence shows they built the bricks right there on the line.
Which brings us to this idea of an industrial miracle. When we think of the Great Wall of China, we know it's really a patchwork quilt, right?
Totally. Different dynasties, different materials, built over 1,000 years. It's not one thing.
But the Wall of Gorgon, that was built in a single push, one generation, maybe 30, 40 years.
The intensity is what's so hard to grasp. It's like comparing the way the U.S. highway system slowly grew over decades to someone deciding to build the entire I-95 corridor from Maine to Florida in one go.
That is a perfect analogy.
And you can see the proof on the ground. The archaeology has found the kilns they used to fire the bricks.
How far apart were they?
In some places, they're only 40 to 100 meters apart.
That's factory floor density.
Yes, it's an assembly line. And the bricks are all standardized, about 40 centimeters square, 10 centimeters thick. A brick from one end of the wall is basically identical to a brick from the other.
And that proves it. That's the smoking gun for a massive centralized government project. This wasn't local lords building their own sections.
No, this was a top-down imperial mega project. It shows a Sasanian state that could manage labor, fuel. Think of how many trees they had to cut down supply lines and engineering specs across a huge hostile frontier. They were at the absolute peak of their power.
So you have the wall, the canal, the factory line of kilns. What about the troops? You said 30,000 soldiers? That's not just a few guys on patrol.
No, this is what they call a continuous defensive line. It wasn't a tripwire to warn of an attack. It was a hardened border.
A fortress chain?
Exactly. There are almost 40 identifiable forts built right into the structure of the wall itself. The soldiers lived inside the defenses.
And they were all line of sight, I read.
For the most part, yes. So a sentry at Fort 12 sees a dust cloud in the distance. He lights a signal fire. Fort 11 and Fort 13 see it instantly and light theirs.
It's like a biological nervous system, or an ancient fiber optic cable made of fire.
That's a great way to put it. You could send a message from the Caspian Sea to the mountains in just a few hours. It lets you move your troops to where the attack is actually happening. It turns a static defense into a dynamic one.
It takes away the nomad's biggest advantage, which is speed and surprise. The wall slows them down, and the signal system lets you concentrate your forces.
Precisely.
Okay, but I have to ask the big skeptical question. We see these huge defensive lines in history, like the Maginot Line, and they famously fail. Did the Red Snake actually work?
That is the million-dollar question. Tactically, almost certainly yes. It would have stopped all the small-scale raiding cold.
Right, it filters out the noise. You're not going to try and scale a 10-meter wall and cross a canal just to steal some livestock.
Exactly. It forced any enemy to commit to a full-blown siege. But strategically. Well, the Sasanian Empire was eventually conquered by the Islamic caliphates coming from the south. The wall was facing the wrong way.
So it didn't save the empire. And you could even argue that the massive cost of building and manning it might have weakened the state, making it more vulnerable from other directions.
It's the classic superpower trap. You spend so much defending the borders that the core begins to weaken.
But there's that psychological element too. We talk about security theater today, but for them, theater was power.
Huge power. For a farmer living in Gorgon, seeing that massive red line on the horizon, it's a daily reminder that the state is there, that the king is powerful. It makes the empire real, solid.
It turns existential anxiety into solid geometry.
I like that. But I think it's more than just a symbol. The Sasanians were practical. Their elite troops were the cataphracts, these heavily armored cavalry, basically tanks on horseback.
The hammer of the army.
The hammer, yes, but they're slow to deploy. The wall is the anvil. It stalks the fast-moving nomadic armies, forces them to bunch up, and creates the perfect killing field for your heavy cavalry to smash into them.
So the wall wasn't just a shield, it was a weapon system.
The whole thing was an integrated weapon system. Wall, canal, forts, and army.
It just completely reframes that period of history. We call it the Dark Ages, but here in Iran, you have this industrial-scale machine reshaping the very landscape to fit its strategic needs.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't monolithic. While the Western Roman Empire was breaking apart, the Sasanian Empire was flexing an incredible engineering and organizational muscle.
But like all great projects, it had a shelf life. The empire falls in the 7th century, the paychecks stop coming.
And the maintenance stops. The canal silts up. People probably start taking the bricks to build their own houses. The Red Snake gets slowly reabsorbed by the landscape it was built to defend.
And it makes you wonder about today. What are our red snakes? Are they our digital firewalls, our border fences? Are they practical tools or just really, really expensive symbols of our own anxieties?
I think it's always both, isn't it? We build walls because we want to draw a line between order and chaos, safety and danger. The Sasanians use brick, we use concrete and code. The impulse is the same.
Maybe the real lesson from Gorgon isn't about the wall at all. Maybe it's that the real strength was the society behind it. The planning, the shared vision it took to build something like that. That's the thing that's truly powerful.
Well said. The bricks are just what's left behind.
A fascinating piece of lost history. But as mind-blowing as a 121-mile brick wall is, our next fact deals with a barrier of a totally different kind.
Oh, this one. This one still makes my head spin a little.
I almost didn't believe this next one when I first read it. It sounds like science fiction, but as you're about to hear in fact number 3, the reality is even more extraordinary than the fiction. Welcome back. We are moving deeper into our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 3.
We're definitely entering the territory of the truly controversial now. I mean, if the previous facts were about established history, this one sits right on that uncomfortable edge between rigorous archaeology and what I'd call wishful thinking.
I love that distinction. We've been talking about massive networks, geography, but for this one, we are shrinking the scale way, way down.
Right.
We aren't looking at a city or a mountain range. We are looking at a dusty shelf in the National Museum of Iraq back in the 1930s.
Sounds kind of underwhelming when you put it that way, doesn't it?
It really does. It looks like something you'd find in the back of a kitchen cabinet. But here's where things take a sharp turn. We're not looking at a massive monument or a lost city. but a clay pot that might rewrite the entire history of science. We are talking about the Baghdad battery.
Ah, yes. This is one of those artifacts that just refuses to go away. It's been sparking debate, pun definitely intended, for nearly 90 years.
And the question is so simple.
Deceptively simple. Did ancient peoples, specifically in Mesopotamia, roughly 2,000 years ago, have electricity?
Just saying, ancient electricity feels like an oxymoron. It sounds like a bad sci-fi plot. But okay, before we get into the whole aliens built the pyramids territory, which we're definitely not doing.
No, absolutely not.
We need to ground this in reality. Who are we talking about here? Who were these people?
We're talking about the Parthian Empire, or maybe the early Sasanian period, so roughly 150 BCE to about 250 CE. And it's important to clarify who the Parthians were because they often get skipped over in history class.
Right.
They weren't just some ancient people. They were the superpower rival to Rome. They controlled the Silk Road. They were incredibly sophisticated. Art, architecture, trade. This wasn't a primitive society.
Okay, so the cultural backdrop is there. They had the resources, the know-how. Now let's visualize the object itself. Wilhelm Koenig, he's the director of the museum, finds this thing in 1938. What is he looking at?
He's looking at a yellow, terracotta-colored clay jar. It's small, only about 14 centimeters tall. So, what, 5.5 inches?
Tiny.
On the outside, it is completely unremarkable. If you walked past a display case of these, you wouldn't even slow down.
It's the hidden in plain sight thing, but the anomaly, the weird part, is on the inside.
Exactly. Koenig looked inside the broken neck of this pot and saw something that just shouldn't have been there. Inside the jar was a cylinder made of a rolled copper sheet, and suspended inside that copper cylinder was an iron rod.
And it was held in place so it wasn't touching the copper.
Held in place by an asphalt stopper, a bitumen seal, so no, it didn't touch the copper.
Copper, iron, a container, and a seal.
Yeah.
I remember enough from high school physics to know that this arrangement is, well, it's suspicious.
Suspicious is a polite way to put it. I mean, if you have any background in chemistry or physics, that specific arrangement, two different metals, copper and iron, in a container that keeps them isolated but allows for a liquid that rings a massive bell.
It looks exactly like a battery.
It looks exactly like a galvanic cell, a wet cell battery.
Okay, let's pause on the science for a sec because I want to make sure I get the mechanism. Why do those two metals make electricity? It's chemistry, not magic.
Right, it's all about electron flow. Different metals have different potentials to hold on to their electrons. Iron is more willing to give up its electrons than copper is. So if you put them both in an electrolyte...
Like vinegar or lemon juice.
Exactly, something acidic, even bad wine would work. The acid starts to eat away at the iron.
And that reaction releases electrons?
It does. The iron oxidizes. Those electrons now need somewhere to go. If you connect a wire from the iron to the copper, the electrons will flow from the iron through the wire to the copper, and that flow of electrons, that is electricity.
And the jar found in Baghdad had the copper and the iron in the perfect position for all this to happen.
It did. The copper cylinder was soldered with a lead-tin mix, which is advanced metallurgy in itself. The iron rod hung right in the middle. You fill that jar with grape juice or vinegar, and you have a working battery.
So people have tested this, right? I feel like I saw this on TV years ago. Didn't Mythbusters take a crack at this?
Oh yeah, they did. And so have countless engineering students and archaeologists. And the result is always the same.
It works.
It works. You build a replica, you fill it with an acidic liquid, it generates a voltage.
How much power are we talking, though? Are we jump-starting a chariot here?
Hardly. A single jar usually produces somewhere between half a volt and maybe 1 volt.
Okay, so less than a regular AA battery. Not exactly industrial power.
It's not. But it is perceptible. And this is where the enthusiast theory really takes off. Imagine you're a Parthian artisan. You're cleaning your metals with vinegar. You accidentally bridge the gap between the iron and the copper with your wet finger.
You'd feel it.
You would feel a tingle, a distinct metallic sting.
Wow. That's a powerful image. Bridging a 2,000-year gap with a feeling. That taste of electricity. It's a fundamental force. We think of Volta discovering it in 1800, but the physics were always just sitting there waiting.
The physics are eternal. The discovery is temporal. And this is where we have to build the case for the believers. Because if you have a jar that makes electricity, the next question is, what were they doing with it? You don't build a complex device just to tickle your tongue.
Well, the most common theory I always see is electroplating.
Right. Using electricity to dissolve a thin layer of gold and deposit it onto, say, a copper or silver bracelet, It's a way to make cheap jewelry look like the real deal.
Which honestly sounds exactly like something humans would invent. A way to counterfeit luxury goods. That's like the most human motivation in history.
It is compelling. Economic incentive is usually the mother of invention, and the replicas can do it. If you wire up a few of these jars in a series, you can boost the voltage. Mythbusters actually managed to electroplate a small token. It wasn't perfect, but it worked.
So you can picture it, a secret workshop in Ctesiphon. An artisan with these magic jars, he takes a copper bracelet, dips it in a solution connected to the jars, pulls out a gold one, sells it for 10 times the price.
And it's a trade secret. Exactly. There are other theories too, like electrotherapy. We know the Greeks used electric torpedo fish to treat pain, like gout or headaches.
Like a primitive 10NS unit.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Maybe these jars were a portable version of that.
Mm-hmm.
A doctor could carry a pain-numbing jar to a patient's house.
Or, and this one is my personal favorite, the religious awe angle. You rig these up inside a metal statue in a temple. A worshiper comes in, touches the idol, and ZAP.
The god is spoken.
The Wizard of Oz effect. It's so plausible from a psychological standpoint. If you could control a force that creates a spark or a sting, you would absolutely use it to consolidate power.
He would.
So, okay. We have a mechanism that works, we have replicas that prove it, we have economic and religious motives that make total sense. Why is this even a debate? Why isn't this chapter 1 of every science textbook?
Because now I have to be the buzzkill.
I knew it! Here comes the archaeological reality check.
It's necessary. The problem with everything we just discussed, the jewelry, the therapy, the magic statues, is that it is all 100% speculation. When we look at the hard evidence, the battery theory just starts to crumble.
Where does it break down?
It breaks down at the chemical level. So you look at the work of experts like Dr. David A. Scott, a conservation scientist. He points out a critical flaw. If these were used as batteries, they needed an electrolyte, vinegar, wine, whatever.
Yeah.
And they need to be refilled all the time. Now, this is an unglazed clay pot, porous. If you keep acidic liquid in a clay pot for weeks or months, that liquid soaks into the ceramic.
It would leave a residue, a stain.
You would leave specific chemical signatures.
Yeah.
We should find copper salts, organic acid residue, deeply embedded in the clay. But when the original jars were analyzed, nothing.
No vinegar traces at all.
No characteristic chemical staining consistent with a working cell. The inside of the copper was corroded, sure, but in a way that's consistent with just natural weathering over 2,000 years, not the intense chemical attack you'd see in a battery.
That's a pretty big hole in the theory. What about the electroplated stuff? We should be able to find that, right? The fake gold jewelry.
That's the second smoking gun, or, well, the lack of one.
Well,
we have thousands of gold-plated items from that period. We know exactly how they gilded things.
how?
They use mercury gilding, or they'd hammer on gold foil. You can tell the difference under a microscope easily.
Yeah.
Electroplating deposits metal at a molecular level. It looks totally different. And we have not found one single artifact from that era that was clearly electroplated.
So we have a potential battery that was never used as a battery to make products that don't exist.
That pretty much sums it up. And there's a broader problem here too. It's what we call the steam engine and the Roman villa problem.
I've heard this analogy. It's about the steam toys,
Yeah.
right? Hero of Alexandria.
Yes, exactly. Around the 1st century, he built a device called an aeolipile. It was a metal sphere that spun around using steam jets. It was a steam engine.
But they didn't build locomotives.
They didn't. And people always ask why. Well, the answer usually comes down to economics. The Romans had slavery. Labor was cheap. They didn't need labor-saving machines. There was no pressure to scale that toy up into a train.
So even if the Parthians found out this jar made a spark, they might have just seen it as a curiosity, a party trick.
Precisely. It's an orphan invention, a technology that exists before the infrastructure or the need is there to support it. Without copper wire, without light bulbs, without motors. What is electricity to them? It's just a novelty, a toy.
That is somehow sadder than them not having it at all, to have the seed of the future in your hand and just put it back on the shelf.
It is poignant. But we still have to explain the object. If it wasn't a battery, why build this weird copper iron bitumen thing? You don't do that by accident.
Right, the intentionality is undeniable, so what's the boring explanation?
The boring explanation, and very likely the correct one, is that it was for storage.
Storage for what?
Sacred scrolls.
Okay, walk me through that. Why do you need copper and iron to store a piece of paper?
Well, think about the climate. The Tigris-Euphrates Valley is humid. If you have a precious papyrus or parchment scroll, a religious text, a royal genealogy, You have to protect it from moisture and bugs.
Okay.
So you roll the scroll up, you put it inside a copper tube because copper is naturally antimicrobial. Then you seal the top with bitumen to make it airtight.
But what about the iron rod? That's the part that feels weird.
That's the sticking point.
Yeah.
Some suggest the scroll was wrapped around the rod. Or maybe it was a ritual thing. I mean, we find thousands of incantation bowls in this region. The Parthians were big on protective magic. Maybe burying iron and copper together had a purpose we just don't get.
A spiritual logic, not a scientific one.
Exactly. We're projecting our scientific logic onto their spiritual world.
You know, that leads me to the biggest takeaway here. This whole thing, it really feels like a Rorschach test.
It is the ultimate archaeological Rorschach test.
We look at a clay pot and we see a Duracell.
Because that's what we understand. We live in a world defined by electricity. So when we see components that could make it, we assume that must be the purpose. We struggle to accept that someone could put those pieces together and see something completely different.
It's a bias toward technological progress. We want to believe history is a straight line, that we just get smarter and smarter. Finding a battery 2,000 years ago, it validates that idea that the ancients were just like us.
It's a comforting story. But the truth is, they were geniuses, just in ways that don't always look like our genius. They built incredible irrigation and architecture without needing a single volt.
And there's this lingering thought I have just the fragility of knowledge. Let's say, just for a second, they did use it for something, magic tricks, whatever, and then they stopped. It just proves that technology isn't permanent. You can know something and then forget it for 2,000 years.
That's the scary part. Progress isn't a one-way street. It can slip back. Whether it's a battery or a scroll jar, the knowledge of what it was is gone. We're just left holding the pieces.
So, final verdict.
The verdict. I'd say it's a galvanic cell by accident, not by design. The Parthians had the materials, they had the physics, but they likely lacked the concept. It sits in that gray zone of technically possible, historically improbable.
I think I can live with that. It's a good reminder to keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out.
Nicely put.
Well, speaking of things that are technically complex and hold the system together, this leads us perfectly to the next step.
It certainly does. We've looked at the technology we project onto the past. Now we need to look at the logic that dictates our future.
We are down to the final two. The tension is building because fact number 2 sets the stage for the absolute pinnacle of our countdown. This is the logic that holds the entire system together. Welcome back. We are moving deeper into our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 2.
We are definitely getting into the heavy hitters now. This is where the map really gets rewritten.
It really is. We've spent the last few segments on tangible things, nanotech swords, ancient batteries, plumbing.
Stuff you can hold?
Exactly. But number 2 on our list, it's different. It's not an artifact. It's not something we carved or engineered. It's something hiding inside us.
Precisely. And it's arguably more permanent than any stone monument could ever be.
We're talking about the genetic ghost. And just to be super clear for everyone listening, we are not pivoting to a paranormal deep dive here.
No hauntings, no ectoplasm.
None of that. We're talking about a ghost in the biological machine.
Right. And to really get why this is such a shock to the system, you have to think about the model of human evolution we all, learned in school.
Oh yeah, the single file line.
Single file line, or maybe a neat little tree. You have Neanderthals, you have Denisovans, and you have us, Homo sapiens. Tidy.
We like that model because it's clean. We have the bones, we have the fossils. You can go into a museum, point at a skull and say, there, that's our cousin.
It's tactile evidence. You can measure it.
But here's the hook that just completely shatters that tidy picture. There is a massive piece of the human puzzle that is statistically, mathematically proven to exist, yet we have never seen it.
Not a single bone, not a chipped tooth, no tools, nothing.
And that's the part that I think usually trips people up.
Yeah.
Because in archaeology, no evidence usually means it didn't happen. So how can we be so sure a whole species existed if we've never found a single physical trace?
How do you find a ghost?
Yeah.
You find it by looking at the people it's, well, not haunted, but the people who inherited its legacy. We know because of the DNA carried by people living in West Africa today.
Yeah.
Geneticists, specifically, teams analyzing the Yoruba and Mende populations, they started running these really advanced statistical models on the genomes.
Just looking for the usual ancestry patterns?
Exactly. But they kept hitting these, call them interference patterns. They found these long stretches of DNA in what's called high linkage disequilibrium.
Okay, stop there. Let's unpack linkage disequilibrium. That basically means big chunks of DNA are traveling together through generations without getting broken up, right?
Spot on, which implies they entered the gene pool relatively recently.
Because if they were super ancient, they'd be all chopped up and scattered by now.
Precisely. Millions of years of recombination would have scrambled them. But these were long, coherent strands, and the kicker, they were incredibly divergent.
Divergent meaning they didn't look like our DNA.
They didn't look like modern human DNA at all.
But we know about Neanderthal DNA, right? A lot of us carry that. Could it be that?
That was the first thing they checked. They compared it to the Neanderthal genomes. No match. Then they compared it to Denisovan genomes.
The ones from the cave in Siberia.
Right. And again, no match. These stretches of DNA are completely distinct from anything we've ever seen.
So if it's not us, and it's not the cousins we know about, it has to be a stranger.
A total stranger. That's what geneticists call a ghost population. It's a group of archaic humans we've inferred entirely from the marks they left in the DNA of people today.
So we haven't found their fossils, but we've found their genetic fingerprint.
Written into the chromosomes of millions of people walking around at this very moment.
It's like finding a puzzle piece in the box and you realize it belongs to a completely different picture you didn't even know existed.
That's a perfect analogy. It's called introgression, from a source that we have no fossil record for.
So let's talk about the scale of this. Because, sometimes when we talk about ancient DNA, it's a fraction of a percent. Almost statistical noise.
Oh, this is not even close to noise. The numbers are. They're significant enough to reshape how we think about ancestry. Researchers estimate that in those West African populations, roughly 2 to 19% of their genetic heritage comes from this mysterious group.
Wait. Up to 19%?
Up to 19%?
That's practically a grandparent's worth of DNA. That's a massive amount.
It is a foundational block of their heritage. I mean, to give you some context, most non-African populations have about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA.
Right.
This ghost population could be contributing 10 times that amount in some people. This isn't a drop in the bucket. It's a huge splash.
And that has to imply a long period of interaction. You don't get to 19% from just 1 or 2 chance encounters.
No, you absolutely do not. The timeline suggests a deep parallel existence for a very, very long time.
How long are we talking?
Well, based on mutation rates, what we call the molecular clock, this ghost lineage split from our common ancestor somewhere between 360,000 and, get this, almost 1 million years ago.
1 million years. That's before Homo sapiens were even a thing.
Exactly. So they went on their own evolutionary journey for hundreds of thousands of years. But then, and this is the key part, the data suggests they reconnected and interbred with the ancestors of living humans much more recently.
When was that?
Roughly 40 to 50,000 years ago.
So they were living parallel to us, total strangers on the same continent for almost 1 million years. And then our paths crossed again.
And they didn't just cross, they merged. We absorbed them.
Reading the research, there was this one analogy that really, really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
It's like discovering a new primary color.
I like that. Go on.
Okay, so imagine someone proved, mathematically, that a color existed between blue and green, but no human eye has the receptors to actually see it.
Okay, I'm with you.
We could measure its wavelength, we could prove it's there, but we have no fossilized to look at it. That's what this ghost DNA is. It's a color in the human spectrum we can prove exists, but we can't visualize the face that went with it.
That is profound. And it's also, a little tragic, because these weren't just data points, these were people.
Right.
They had some form of language, they lived in families, they survived ice ages, and to us, they're just missing pixels in the human portrait.
It really forces you to confront what I've been calling the mirror scenario.
The mirror scenario.
Yeah. Imagine looking in the mirror. You see yourself, your parents, your grandparents, but then you realize that a big chunk of what's looking back at you, maybe how your immune system works or how you metabolize certain foods, is a gift from a completely different, unnamed species.
It completely changes the definition of human, doesn't it?
It destroys it. It destroys any idea of purity.
Absolutely.
Ah.
We love that clean tree we talked about, one trunk, a few branches, all leading straight to us at the top. But this proves it's not a tree. It's a tangled web.
A messy web.
It's a messy, chaotic, a coalition of species. Human isn't singular, it's plural. We are all mosaics.
A coalition of species. That's such a strong phrase.
But it's accurate. I mean, every genome is a palimpsest, a manuscript that's been written over again and again. We carry the ghosts of everyone we met along the way. We are a living archive.
And it makes you wonder what else is hiding in there. We only found this ghost because we finally started looking at West African genomes in detail.
Right. And let's be honest, genomic studies have been heavily biased towards European populations for a long time.
So who knows what other ghosts are waiting in genomes from India or the Amazon or anywhere, just waiting for our tech to get good enough to see them.
That's the exciting part. We're just opening the book. We thought we had the full cast of characters, and now we realize we've only met half the actors.
It's a staggering thought. But here is where things take a sharp turn. I thought the last one was wild, but this next fact, this changed my entire perspective. We're moving from the network inside ourselves to the network that built the entire world. Stop.
Before we go any further, we have reached the moment we've been building toward for the last 2 hours.
This is it?
Fact number 1 is the reason this podcast exists. It is the holy grail of this entire subject. Everything we have discussed, from the network to the chemical warfare, all of it leads to this one final staggering truth. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
This is the most extraordinary fact of them all.
We have finally reached the summit. Everything we've discussed so far has been leading to this one staggering revelation. This is the fact that changes the entire story of the ancient world.
It really, really does. I mean, if you just look back at where we've been, we've spent this whole journey looking at specific things.
Right, objects. The Damascus steel swords, the Baghdad batteries, the Great Walls.
Exactly. We're looking at isolated objects in, specific places. But fact number 1 isn't a single object.
And it's not a single place.
No. It's the invisible connective tissue that made all of those other things possible.
It's the context for all of them. We have this very persistent bias when we think about the ancient world. We picture these isolated pockets of humanity.
A village here, a city-state there.
Yeah, separated by this terrifying, unknown wilderness. We just assume they were cut off, living in their own little bubbles, terrified of what was over the next hill.
But the evidence, it tells us the exact opposite. So fact number 1 is the first global network.
The first global network.
And the revelation here is that long before fiber optic cables, long before satellites, the ancient world, specifically the Bronze Age, was already a fully globalized, interconnected system.
A globalized system thousands of years ago. That's a heavy claim. Usually when we say network, we're thinking digital.
Of course.
We're thinking about the internet, latency, servers. We are not thinking about guys in sandals.
And that is exactly the comparison we need to make. But to really understand it, we have to stop looking at maps for a second and start looking at people.
Yeah.
We need to go back to the source code of civilization.
Okay, so let's run a simulation. I want to try a visualization here to ground this because it's hard to wrap your head around the scale.
Good idea.
I want you, the listener, to come with us. We're going to travel back roughly 4,000 years to around 2000 BCE. We are stepping into the marketplace of the city of Ur.
In ancient Mesopotamia, so modern-day Iraq.
Which was basically the New York City or London of its day, right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the largest, most cosmopolitan cities on Earth at the time.
Exactly. So you're standing in this market, and I want you to just imagine the sensory overload. It's not some quiet village exchange. It's hot, it's dusty, and the first thing that hits you is the sound.
It's complete cacophony.
You hear Akkadian merchants shouting prices. You hear Sumerian scribes reading contracts out loud. But if you listen really closely, it's not just locals, is it?
No, and that's the key. That's the first indicator. If you were a linguist just standing there, you'd hear Maluhan sailors. That's what they call people from the Indus Valley.
From thousands of miles away.
Thousands of miles away, speaking a language you wouldn't recognize. You'd hear traders from the highlands of Central Asia. It was a babble of languages, probably a pidgin trade tongue, just to get a deal done.
And then you look at what they're actually selling. You walk up to a stall and the merchant lays out these beads. They are this deep electric blue, lapis lazuli.
And right next to them, glowing orange red, are carnelian stones.
And maybe over there you smell something heavy and sweet, frankincense.
Now, just pause right there. To the person standing in that market in 2000 BCE, those are just luxury goods.
Pretty things.
Pretty things, nice to have. But to us, looking back at the data, that table is a logistical miracle.
Because of the geography.
Because of the impossibility of the geography. Take the lapis lazuli, that deep blue stone. It doesn't exist in Mesopotamia.
Not at all.
Geologically, it's impossible to find there. That stone almost certainly came from the Badakhshan region.
Which is, wow, way up in modern-day northeastern Afghanistan.
Right. That is a journey of nearly 2,000 miles. They call it the Lapis Lazuli Road. That stone had to be mined in high mountains, carried down through dangerous passes, traded across the Iranian plateau, passed from hand to hand.
Across a dozen different territories just to end up on a table in Ur and the carnelian.
That's likely from the Harappan civilization, so modern-day Pakistan and India. And the frankincense is coming all the way up from the southern tip of Arabia.
So every single person in that market, the buyer, the seller, the scribe, they all know these things are foreign.
They know.
They know that blue stone traveled a distance that would take months, maybe even a year, to cross. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, they don't seem shocked by it.
That's the aha moment. It's
Yep.
not a miracle to them. It's just Tuesday.
Yeah.
This is how their world works. You are looking at a node in humanity's first internet.
It was slower, sure.
A lot slower, but the reach was just staggering.
But we have to ask why. I get that blue stones are pretty, frankincense smells nice, but humans are practical. You don't build a continent-spanning high-risk network just for jewelry, do you? Was this all about luxury?
No, and that's the common misconception. We see the gold and the gems in museums and we think ancient trade was all about vanity.
Right.
But in the Bronze Age, this network wasn't a luxury. It was a survival requirement.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the technology that named the era. Bronze.
The nuclear technology of the ancient world.
Precisely. If you want a cutting-edge army or durable tools or efficient farming equipment, you need bronze. You cannot build a civilization on stone and wood alone if your neighbor has metal swords.
Makes sense.
But bronze is an alloy. It's a mixture of two metals, copper and tin.
It's about 90% copper, 10% tin, right?
Give or take, yes. And this is where nature played a very cruel trick on ancient humanity.
What's the trick?
They almost never exist in the same place.
Oh, wow. So you physically cannot find the ingredients for the civilization starter kit in your own backyard. That seems inconvenient.
It's more than inconvenient. It's a geopolitical nightmare. The geology forbids it. Copper is relatively common. You find it in places like Cyprus or Oman.
Okay.
But tin. Tin is a crustal anomaly. It is incredibly rare in the ancient Near East. To get tin, you have to go to Central Asia, modern Uzbekistan, or maybe all the way to Cornwall in Britain or parts of Anatolia.
So let's just follow the logic here. If I'm a king in Mesopotamia or a pharaoh in Egypt and I want a bronze sword.
You cannot make it alone. No city-state, no matter how powerful, could be self-sufficient in the Bronze Age. If you wanted the technology that defined your era, you were forced to trade.
You had to maintain these long-distance connections.
So the network wasn't optional.
It was the engine of civilization.
It was a technological requirement. You literally could not have the Bronze Age without international trade. That necessity forced people to build these complex relationships, these routes, these treaties, just to keep the supply chain moving.
It's amazing to think about how fragile that was. I mean, we worry about supply chains today. A chip shortage stops car production.
Right.
But for them, if the trade stops, the technology stops. They go back to the Stone Age.
Which is exactly what happened at the end of the Bronze Age, the so-called Bronze Age collapse. But that's a whole other deep dive. The point is, this need created a web that stretched from the Atlantic to the Indus.
Okay, so we have the logic for it. We know they needed it to exist. But, historians are skeptical people. Do we have the smoking gun?
We do.
Because usually with ancient history, we're guessing based on fragments. Is there anything that gives us a snapshot of this network in action?
We have something better than a snapshot. We have a time capsule. We have the Uluburun shipwreck.
Yes. I was hoping we'd get to this. This is one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century.
It's incredible. So to set the scene, this ship sank off the coast of Turkey, late 14th century BCE.
So about 300 years ago?
Yep. And because it sank deep and it sank quickly, the cargo was preserved.
And when divers found it in the 1980s, they didn't just find a few broken pots.
No. They found a floating fortune. They found literally tons of copper ingots. They found tin ingots, raw glass, ivory, gold, jewelry.
It sounds like a treasure chest, but it's the specific breakdown of the cargo that really proves the network theory, isn't it?
It is. Think of the Uluburun ship as a crashed server.
I love that analogy. Break that down for us.
Well, imagine the internet goes down, but you somehow manage to freeze one data center exactly as it was the moment it failed.
Okay.
You can look at the hard drives and see exactly what data was being processed.
Yeah.
That ship is a crashed server for the Bronze Age economy.
So by looking at the cargo, we see the data of the ancient world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the data is aggressively multinational. The copper, 10 tons of it, is chemically matched to Cyprus.
Okay.
The 1 ton of tin, likely from the mines in Central Asia. The glass ingots are Canaanite or Egyptian. The ivory is hippopotamus teeth from the Nile and elephant tusk from Syria. There were even weapons from the Mycenaeans in Greece.
So it wasn't just I trade with my neighbor, it was I trade with a guy who traded with a guy who traded with a guy 3,000 miles away.
And did you catch the ratio I just mentioned? 10 tons of copper, 1 ton of tin.
That's the 10-to-1 ratio for making bronze.
Exactly. This wasn't a random assortment of goods. This was an industrial shipment. This is a factory order being delivered to some kingdom to outfit an army. It proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that there was a floating, interconnected economy.
Mediterranean, Near East, Africa, beyond. I remember reading about the shape of the ingots themselves. They weren't just lumps of metal.
Right, the oxhide ingots. They were shaped with these handles on the corners so they could be easily carried by men or strapped onto a donkey.
That implies standardization.
It implies a packaging standard designed for the network, just like a shipping container today.
Which brings us back to that analogy you made earlier about this being the first internet, because I think that's more than just a clever turn of phrase. The structural similarities are actually kind of spooky.
They are. If you strip away the technology, forget silicon chips and fiber optics for a second, and just look at the architecture of the system, it's identical.
Okay, let's break that down. How is a camel caravan like an email?
Well, think about packet switching. That's how the modern internet works. You break information into little packets and send them through different routes to get to a destination.
Right.
In the Bronze Age, the packets weren't electrons moving at the speed of light. They were physical goods, ingots, textiles, ideas moving at the speed of a camel.
Which is, what, about 3 miles per hour?
About 3 miles per hour.
3 miles per hour, so extremely high latency.
Extremely high latency, yes. But the principle is the same. It's asynchronous messaging. When a scribe in Ur orders tin from Anatolia, he's sending a request into the network. He trusts the routing protocols.
The caravans, the merchants, the treaties.
Right. To deliver that message and return the requested data, which in this case is a lump of metal, maybe 6 months later.
You mentioned protocols. The internet runs on protocols like TCP/IP, so different computers can talk to each other. Did the Bronze Age really have an equivalent to that?
Absolutely. You can't trade internationally without standards. They had standardized weights and measures. If I buy a shekel of silver, I need to know your shekel weighs the same as my shekel.
Or the whole deal falls apart.
They had standardized contract formats. We see this in cuneiform tablets.
So cuneiform was the HTML of the Bronze Age.
In a way, yes. It was the code that allowed the system to function across different cultures. And most importantly, both systems rely on what we call distributed trust.
Distributed trust? That sounds like blockchain terminology. What does that mean in 2000 BCE?
It means I can do business with a stranger I will never meet. Because the network provides a framework of trust. I don't need to know the miner in Afghanistan to buy his lapis. I don't need to shake his hand.
The network itself, the seals, the scribes, the laws of the market, mediates that relationship for you.
That's it. And that allows for commerce between people who might otherwise be enemies, or at least total aliens to one another, and it creates stability. It creates a reason not to kill each other.
So really, the only difference between our world and theirs is bandwidth.
Bandwidth and speed. We move exabytes of data in milliseconds. They move tons of cargo in years. But the desire, the architecture, the why of it all, it's exactly the same.
This leads us to the philosophical climax of this whole journey, because when you really look at this massive, slow-moving, beautiful web of connection, it forces you to rethink what it means to be human.
It really does.
We have this narrative of this self-made man or the isolated genius.
We love that story. The story of the isolated civilization that pulls itself up by its bootstraps. We have this myth of independence. We like to think we're strongest when we're alone.
But looking at the Bronze Age, independence looks like a death sentence.
Exactly. Isolation is the anomaly. Connection is the default state. If you were cut off from the network in the Bronze Age, you didn't become independent and strong. You ran out of bronze. You ran out of grain during a famine. You collapsed.
So the fundamental truth this reveals is that humans have always been networked creatures.
We didn't build networks because we advanced. We advanced because we built networks. That is the crucial distinction.
That's a powerful reframing. We often talk about how technology alienates us, how unnatural it is to be so connected, doom scrolling and social media. But you're saying this impulse to connect is actually our most natural state?
I am. Think about it. The impulse to trade, to take a beautiful blue stone from a mountain in Afghanistan and carry it to a buyer in Egypt, that is the exact same impulse that drives social media today.
It's the drive to connect.
To say, I have this value. Do you want it? to share ideas and goods and culture.
So we're just returning to what we have always been, just faster.
The Bronze Age network moved a piece of lapis in a year. Ours moves a video in a millisecond. But the network isn't something we made. The network is what we are. We can't function without each other. The laptop you're using, the coffee you're drinking, it's all the product of a global web.
Just like the bronze sword was 4,000 years ago. So when we look at the Uluburun shipwreck or imagine that market in Ur, we aren't looking at aliens, we're looking in a mirror.
We are looking at ourselves, just with different tools. And that, I think, is the most hopeful thing about history. We have always found ways to reach across the unknown, across deserts, oceans, and language barriers to work together.
It's fact number one, the most extraordinary revelation in our journey today. It's a lot to process, but it's the final piece of the puzzle that proves just how magnificent our world truly is.
It really is. And to those of you who are still with us, thank you. You've just completed an extraordinary journey with us. We know your time is the most valuable thing you have, and we are genuinely honored that you chose to spend these last 2 hours exploring the unknown with us.
If this episode shifted your perspective or taught you something new, please do 3 things for us. First, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive. Second, share this episode with one person who loves a good mystery as much as you do. And finally, leave a comment below. Tell us which of the 10 facts blew your mind the most. We read every single one.
We'll be back tomorrow with another countdown of the most magnificent facts in existence. Until then, keep looking closer, stay curious, and thanks for listening to the Extraordinary 10 podcast.